My name is Sloane King and I am 32 years old. For the last decade, I have constructed a reputation as the most lethal crisis management expert in Chicago. My clients are Fortune 500 CEOs and professional athletes who have more money than common sense. I am the woman they call when they wake up next to a stranger or when they accidentally tweet a racial slur at 3 in the morning. I fix broken reputations. I salvage billion-dollar disasters. I am paid to be cold. I am paid to be calculating. I am paid to cut out the rot so the host can survive. My office is on the 42nd floor of a glass tower overlooking Lake Michigan. It is a sanctuary of silence and beige leather. The only sound in the room was the soft hum of the air conditioning and the rhythmic tapping of my nails against the mahogany desk. I had just finished burying a scandal for a tech mogul that would have cost him $70 million in stock valuation. I saved his career in 48 minutes. I felt powerful. I felt in control. Then my executive assistant Kenna walked in. Kenna is 25 years old and sharp as a diamond cutter. She placed a black leather folder on my desk with the caution of a bomb disposal technician. "The car is downstairs, Sloane," Kenna said. Her voice was professional, but her eyes held a flicker of pity. "You have plenty of time to get to O'Hare International Airport. The flight does not board for another 2 hours." I looked at the folder. Inside were the itineraries for the Anderson family vacation. 4 tickets to Cabo San Lucas, 4 reservations at an all-inclusive 5-star resort, a private catamaran tour, a Michelin-star dinner reservation. The total cost was already hovering around $25,000, and we had not even left the country yet. "Remind me again why I am doing this, Kenna," I asked. I stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. I looked down at the city. It looked so orderly from up here. "Because you are a good daughter," Kenna said. She did not sound convinced. "And because your mother guilt-tripped you about missing the family reunion last year." "Right," I sighed. The family reunion, the event where I would have been asked for loans by cousins I had not seen since elementary school. I picked up my purse. It was a Birkin bag that I bought for myself after closing the biggest deal of my career. It was my armor. "Wish me luck," I said. "You do not need luck," Kenna replied. "You need a stiff drink and the patience of a saint. Do not let them walk all over you, Sloane. You are the boss here. You are the boss out there." I nodded. But Kenna did not understand. In this office, I was Sloane King, the fixers. But the moment I stepped into the gravitational pull of the Anderson family, I became just Sloane, the bank account. The ride to the airport was the last moment of peace I would experience for the next 72 hours. I used the time to mentally prepare myself. I told myself this trip would be different. I told myself that my father Otis was tired and just needed a break. I told myself that my mother Genevieve just wanted to bond. I told myself that my brother Dante had finally matured and that his wife Bianca would at least be civil. I was lying to myself. I saw them before I heard them. They were standing near the entrance of Terminal 3, causing a bottleneck in the flow of travelers. They looked like a traveling circus that had lost its tent. My mother Genevieve was wearing a bright yellow sundress that was far too young for a 60-year-old woman. She had a wide-brimmed straw hat with the words "Vacation Mode" stitched in black cursive sequins. She was holding her phone up at arm length, moving it in a slow circle. She was live streaming to Facebook. "Praise God," I heard her say as I approached. "We are finally here at the airport. The Lord has blessed us with this trip. We are about to jet set to Mexico in style." "Can I get an amen from the prayer circle?" She was performing. She was always performing. Her audience was the deacon board and the choir members at First Baptist Church. She needed them to believe she was living a life of luxury, even though I knew for a fact her bank account was currently overdrawn by $200. My father Otis stood next to her, looking like a beast of burden. He was guarding 4 massive suitcases that looked like knockoff Louis Vuitton. The monogram pattern was slightly crooked. He looked small in his oversized polo shirt. He saw me approaching and offered a weak smile. "Hey, Princess," Otis said. "You made it." "Hi, Dad," I said. I gave him a quick hug. He smelled of Old Spice and resignation. Then there was my brother Dante. He was 35 years old and still waiting for his rap career to take off. He was wearing designer sunglasses indoors. He had a gold chain around his neck that I knew was plated. He was tapping furiously on his phone, ignoring the chaos around him. And finally, there was Bianca, my sister-in-law. Bianca was light-skinned with curly hair that she claimed was natural, but I knew came from a very expensive vendor in India. She was wearing a white linen jumpsuit that looked pristine. She looked me up and down. Her eyes lingered on my hair, which I wore in sophisticated box braids. "You are finally here, Sloane," Bianca said. She did not smile. "We have been waiting for 20 minutes. My feet are hurting in these heels." "Traffic was heavy," I said. My voice was cool. "And the flight does not leave for 2 hours. We are fine." "Sloane, baby," my mother shrieked. She turned the camera toward me. "Say hello to the church family. Everyone look. This is my daughter, the big shot CEO. She is taking her mama on a luxury vacation. Look at that suit. That is Italian silk, everyone. Put the phone away, Mom," I said. I stepped out of the frame. "We need to check in." I walked toward the check-in counter. The line for economy class was long, winding back and forth like a snake. I had booked Economy Plus tickets. It was a sensible choice for a 3-hour flight. The seats had extra legroom and priority boarding. It was generous, or so I thought. Dante looked at the sign above the counter. He took off his sunglasses. "Wait a minute," Dante said. His voice was loud enough to turn heads. "This says main cabin. Where's the first-class line?" I stopped. I felt a headache beginning to throb behind my right eye. "We are flying main cabin, Dante," I said. "I booked Economy Plus. It is a short flight." "Economy," Dante scoffed. He looked at Bianca. His face twisted into a look of pure disgust. "You expect me to sit in economy with the general population?" "Sloane, I am an artist. I have an image to maintain. What if a fan sees me squeezed into a middle seat? It ruins the brand." "You do not have fans, Dante." I wanted to scream. "You have 300 followers on SoundCloud and most of them are bots." But I stayed calm. I was a crisis manager. I de-escalated situations. "The seats are fine," I said. "We have extra legroom. And nobody is going to see you. Just put your hat on and sleep." Bianca let out a dramatic sigh. She fanned herself with her passport. "I cannot do economy, Sloane." Bianca whimpered. She grabbed Dante's arm. "My anxiety acts up in small spaces. You know I get claustrophobic. Plus I dressed for first class. This outfit is not made for polyester seats." Genevieve lowered her phone. The smile vanished from her face. It was replaced by the look she used to give me when I got a B on my report card. "Sloane," Genevieve said. Her voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "Are you serious? You make 6 figures a month. I have told everyone at church we are flying in luxury. Sister Patterson is expecting a photo of me drinking champagne before takeoff. How does it look if I am sitting next to the bathroom?" "It looks like you are going on a free vacation," I said through gritted teeth. "It is not about the money," Genevieve said. She placed a hand on her chest. "It is about respect. We are your family. You treat your clients better than you treat your own flesh and blood. You spend thousands on dinners for strangers, but you want your mother to suffer in a cramped seat. After all I sacrificed for you, I scrubbed floors so you could go to college. I went without so you could have this career. And this is how you repay me, by pinching pennies." The guilt trip. It was a weapon she had honed for 30 years. She knew exactly where to strike. She knew that despite my success, I still carried the deep-seated fear of being an ungrateful daughter. She knew I felt guilty for leaving the neighborhood. She knew I felt guilty for being the only one who made it out. People in the line were starting to stare. A woman with a toddler was looking at us with open curiosity. I felt the heat rising in my cheeks. This was a scene. I did not do scenes. I managed them. I looked at Dante. He was crossing his arms, challenging me. I looked at Bianca. She was inspecting her nails, looking bored and entitled. I looked at my father. He was staring at the floor, refusing to make eye contact. He would not help me. He never helped me. "Fine," I said. I walked up to the counter. The agent was a middle-aged woman with tired eyes. She had watched the whole performance. "How can I help you?" she asked. "I need to upgrade these 4 tickets to first class," I said. My voice was flat. She typed on her keyboard. "That will be $900 per person," she said, "or 60,000 miles per ticket." I closed my eyes. $3,600, or nearly all the miles I had accumulated over 2 years of grueling business travel. Those miles were supposed to be for my own vacation. I had planned to go to Paris alone. I had planned to sit in a lie-flat seat and drink wine and read a book in silence. "Do it," I said. "Use the miles." I handed over my frequent flyer card. It felt like I was handing over a piece of my soul. The agent processed the upgrade. She printed 4 new boarding passes. They had the golden first-class stripe across the top. I handed them to my family. Dante snatched his pass. He grinned. "Now that is what I'm talking about," he said. He high-fived Bianca. "See, babe, I told you handled it. We fly in style or we do not fly at all." Bianca smiled a smug little smirk that made me want to scream. "Thank you, Sloane," she said. Her tone suggested that this was the bare minimum I should have done. Though I hope they serve the good champagne. The domestic flights can be so cheap with their wine selection. Genevieve beamed. She immediately raised her phone again. "Hallelujah!" she shouted to her virtual audience. "Look at this saints. First class. My daughter knows how to treat her queen. We are walking the red carpet today." They turned and marched toward the priority security lane. They walked with a swagger that they had not earned. They did not look back at me. They did not say thank you. They just took the upgrade as if it was their birthright. I stood at the counter. The agent held out one last boarding pass. It was blue. It was standard. "I am sorry, Miss King," the agent said softly. "We only had 4 seats left in first class. The flight is completely full." I looked at the boarding pass. Seat 38B, a middle seat in the very last row right next to the lavatory. I took the ticket. "It is fine," I said. "I will sit in the back." I watched my family disappear through the TSA pre-check line. I adjusted my heavy tote bag on my shoulder and walked toward the general security line, which was currently a 40-minute wait. I stood in line behind a man who smelled like stale cigarettes. I watched my mother on Facebook Live laughing and twirling her hat. I watched Dante posting a photo of his boarding pass with the caption, "Mogul moves." I felt a cold, hard knot forming in my stomach. I had spent 2 years of miles to buy them luxury while I stood in the slow lane. I had sacrificed my comfort for their vanity. This was the pattern. This was the dynamic. I gave and they took. I worked and they spent. I bled and they drank. But as I shuffled forward in the line, taking off my expensive Italian shoes to place them in a dirty gray plastic bin, I made a silent vow. This was the last time. I did not know how true that thought would become. I did not know that in less than 24 hours, the Bank of Sloane would be closed for business. I did not know that the woman standing in seat 38B was about to die, and a new ruthless woman was about to be born in the Mexican sun. I walked through the metal detector. I did not beep. I was made of steel after all. The air in Cabo San Lucas hit me like a physical blow the moment the automatic glass doors of the airport slid open. It was a heavy, suffocating heat that smelled of exhaust fumes and salty ocean breeze. While I was still trying to stretch the cramp out of my lower back from 3 hours in seat 38B, my family was already signaling for a porter. Dante stood on the curb looking like he owned the country. He had tipped his sunglasses down his nose and was surveying the line of waiting vehicles. "Where is the car, Sloane?" Dante asked. He did not look at me. He was too busy adjusting the collar of his linen shirt. "It is coming," I said. I pulled my heavy tote bag higher onto my shoulder. A sleek black Mercedes Sprinter van pulled up to the curb. The driver, a uniformed man named Carlos, hopped out and began loading the luggage. My father Otis watched him struggle with the heavy bags, but did not lift a finger to help. He simply wiped sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief and complained about the humidity. "It is hotter than the devil out here," Otis grumbled. "I thought you said this was a luxury trip. I am sweating through my good shirt already." "Get in the van, Dad," I said. "The air conditioning is on." We climbed into the leather interior. It was cool and smelled of mint. As we pulled away from the airport and headed toward the coast, the scenery shifted from dusty roads to manicured golf courses and gated communities. The Azure Coast Resort rose from the cliffs like a white palace. It was a sprawling complex of infinity pools and marble terraces overlooking the Sea of Cortez. "This is more like it," Bianca said. She pressed her face against the tinted window. We pulled up to the grand entrance. Staff members in white uniforms were waiting with cold towels and glasses of hibiscus tea. My mother, Genevieve, stepped out of the van and immediately handed her empty tea glass to a passing bellman without even making eye contact. "Check us in, Sloane," Genevieve commanded, "and make sure they know we are VIPs. I want the room with the best lighting for my morning devotionals." I walked to the front desk. My credit card felt heavy in my hand. I watched as the receptionist swiped it for the incidental hold. $5,000 blocked on my card, just in case my family decided to trash the room. Given their track record, it was a necessary precaution. The receptionist handed me 4 platinum wristbands. "These grant you access to all the exclusive amenities, Ms. King," she said with a smile. "The private pools, the premium liquor shelf, the spa facilities. Enjoy your stay." I handed the bands to my family. They snapped them onto their wrists instantly. There was no hesitation. There was no thank you. There was only the greedy click of plastic locking into place. "I am hitting the pool," Dante announced. He did not ask about the schedule. He did not ask if I wanted to join. He just turned and walked toward the sound of music his luggage left abandoned in the lobby for the bellmen. "We will meet you there," Bianca called after him. I went to my room to change. I had booked myself a junior suite while I booked my parents and Dante into the 2-bedroom presidential villas. I told myself it was because they needed the space. The truth was, I wanted a door I could lock between us. An hour later, I found them at the Infinity Bar. It was a swim-up bar located in the center of the exclusive adult-only pool. The water was turquoise and sparkling under the midday sun. I walked over wearing a simple black swimsuit and a sheer cover-up. I ordered a sparkling water with lime. I needed to keep a clear head. Dante was already holding a cocktail that looked like it contained more sugar than alcohol. He was deep in conversation with a man I had never seen before. The stranger was wearing board shorts and a gold watch that caught the sunlight a little too aggressively. He had the slick, predatory smile of a timeshare salesman. "Sloane," Dante shouted. He waved me over. "Come here, you have to meet my new boy. This is Marco." I waded through the water. Marco looked me up and down, his eyes lingering on my chest before meeting my face. "Dante tells me you are the money behind the operation," Marco said. He extended a wet hand. I ignored his hand. "I am his sister," I said coldly. Marco laughed. "A sister with deep pockets. That is the best kind. Look, I was just telling Dante here about a golden opportunity. I run a boutique investment firm here in Cabo. We are leveraging cryptocurrency to buy distressed beachfront property. The returns are insane. We are talking 300% in 6 months. I felt the familiar tightening in my chest. I knew this script. I had heard it 1,000 times in 1,000 different variations. Dante's eyes were wide with excitement. "It is legit, Sloane," Dante said. Marco showed me the website. It is strictly for high-net-worth individuals. The buy-in is usually $100,000, but Marco said he can get me in for $50,000 because he likes my vibe. $50,000, I repeated. "Yeah," Dante said. "And here is the thing. I need to move fast. The window closes at 5 o'clock today. I was thinking you could wire the 50 grand to Marco account now, and when the returns hit next month, I will pay you back double." I looked at Dante. He was 35 years old. He truly believed that a stranger he met at a pool bar 10 minutes ago was going to make him a millionaire. It was not just stupidity. It was a dangerous cocktail of greed and delusion. "No," I said. Dante's smile faltered. "What do you mean no?" "I mean no," I said. I looked at Marco. "It is a Ponzi scheme, Dante. There is no real estate. There is no crypto leverage. He is going to take your money and disappear." Marco's face hardened. He dropped the charming act instantly. "You are making a mistake, sweetheart." Marco sneered. "You clearly do not understand modern finance. I understand that your watch is a replica." I said, my voice sharp as a razor. "The second hand is ticking instead of sweeping. That is a dead giveaway for a fake Rolex. And your website was probably registered yesterday on a domain host in Russia. Walk away, Marco, before I call hotel security and have them run a background check on you." Marco's face turned red. He muttered something in Spanish and swam away quickly, disappearing into the crowd near the waterfall. I turned back to Dante. I expected him to thank me. I expected him to realize I had just saved him from being scammed. Instead, he slammed his fist against the marble countertop of the bar, splashing his drink onto my cover-up. "Why do you always do that?" Dante hissed. "Do what?" I asked, wiping sticky rum from my stomach. "You always have to be the smartest person in the room," Dante said. His voice was shaking with rage. "You always have to little boy me." That was a real opportunity, Sloane. I could feel it. "But you cannot stand the idea of me making my own money. You want me to stay broke so you can control me. You are broke because you make bad decisions, Dante," I said quietly. "I just saved you $50,000. You did not save me anything." Dante spat. "You embarrassed me. You think you are better than us because you wear suits and talk like a white girl. But you are just jealous. You are jealous that people actually like me. Nobody likes you, Sloane. They just like your checkbook." He turned and swam away, leaving me standing alone in the turquoise water. The sun was still shining, but the air suddenly felt freezing. I climbed out of the pool and wrapped a dry towel around myself. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, but from the adrenaline of the confrontation. I needed to get ready for lunch. The famous lunch at the seaside restaurant. I went to the presidential villa to check on my parents. I walked into the master suite. The room was massive with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean. My mother was sitting at the vanity table while Bianca stood behind her adjusting a long blonde wig on my mother head. "Oh, good you are here," Genevieve said. She looked at my reflection in the mirror. "We are almost ready. Bianca is just helping me with my unit. We have to look perfect for the photos." Bianca looked at me. She was wearing a silk robe and her face was fully beaten with makeup. Foundation, contour, false lashes, the works. She looked at my wet hair. My braids were pulled back into a practical bun. "Are you wearing your hair like that to lunch?" Bianca asked. Her voice was high and sweet, laced with poisonous concern. "Like what?" I asked. "These are fresh braids, Bianca. I got them done yesterday." "I know," Bianca said. She smoothed her own hair, which fell in loose synthetic waves down her back. "It is just that this restaurant is very upscale, Sloane, and we are trying to capture a certain aesthetic for the family album. Braids can look so urban." Urban! The word hung in the air like a foul smell. It was a code word. A polite way of saying black. A polite way of saying ghetto. A polite way of saying not good enough. Bianca continued oblivious to my silence, or perhaps enjoying it. "I just think a silk press or a nice unit like mine would look classier," she said. "It looks richer. You know what I mean? We want people to know we belong here. The braids make you look like, well, like the help." I looked at my mother. I waited for her to defend me. I waited for her to tell Bianca that my natural hair was beautiful, that my protective style was professional and elegant. Genevieve applied a coat of red lipstick. She smacked her lips together and turned to look at me. "She has a point, Sloane," Genevieve said. "You do look a bit severe. Maybe you could put a scarf on, or wear a hat. We want to look elite, baby. We are representing the family brand." The family brand. I looked at them. My mother in a wig she could not afford. My sister-in-law with hair purchased from a vendor. They were obsessed with performing wealth. They were obsessed with erasing their blackness to fit into a mold of Eurocentric luxury. And me. I was the one paying for the villa. I was the one paying for the lunch. I was the one with the actual wealth. Yet I was the one being told I did not look the part. "My hair is fine," I said. My voice was steady, but inside I was screaming. I am not wearing a hat, and I am certainly not taking fashion advice from someone wearing a tracksuit to a 5-star resort. Bianca jaw dropped. She looked at my mother with wide, innocent eyes. "I was just trying to help." Bianca sniffed. "She is so sensitive, isn't she, Mom? Always taking things the wrong way." "She is just tired," Genevieve said dismissively. She stood up and smoothed her dress. "Come on, let us go to lunch. I am starving. And I want to order the lobster. I heard it is the most expensive thing on the menu." They walked past me, leaving a cloud of heavy floral perfume in their wake. I stood in the center of the suite. I looked around at the plush velvet sofas, the marble floors, the fresh orchids on the table. It was a paradise. A beautiful, expensive paradise. But standing there with the echo of their insults ringing in my ears, I realized something terrifying. I was not a member of this family. I was a prop. I was a utility. I was the foundation they stood on so they could look taller. They did not see me. They did not see Sloane. They saw a credit limit. They saw a safety net. And now they saw an aesthetic liability. I walked to the mirror. I looked at my braids. I touched the intricate pattern on my scalp. I looked at my dark skin. I looked at the eyes that had cried too many tears for people who would not shed a single one for me. I am beautiful, I whispered to my reflection, and I am done paying for people who make me feel ugly. I grabbed my purse. The black American Express card sat inside cool and heavy. It was the key to their happiness, and it was about to become the weapon of their destruction. I walked out of the suite and headed toward the restaurant. The sun was high and unforgiving. The storm was brewing inside me, and the first thunderclap was about to strike right in the middle of the lobster course. The ocean breeze at the Azure restaurant was warm and carried the scent of salt and expensive sunscreen. It was the kind of air that rich people paid thousands of dollars to breathe. But the air at our table was freezing. We were seated at the best table in the house. It was a private patio overlooking the azure waters of the Sea of Cortez, where the waves crashed against the rocks in a rhythmic, hypnotic cadence. I knew it was the best table because I was the one who had booked it 3 months ago. I had called in a favor with the head of hospitality for the resort chain to secure this specific spot. My family did not care about the view. They cared about the menu. My sister-in-law, Bianca, sat to my left. She was signaling the waiter with a sharp snap of her fingers that made me wince. It was the gesture of someone who had never worked a day in the service industry. "Another bottle," Bianca commanded. She did not even look at the waiter. "And bring a fresh bucket of ice. This one is melting too fast." She turned to Dante. Her eyes were wide and bright with a manic sort of greed. "Baby, you have to try this lobster," she said, pointing to the massive crustacean on her plate. "It is so sweet. It tastes like money." Dante was busy chewing on a piece of Wagyu beef that cost $300 for 6 ounces. Grease coated his chin. He washed it down with a gulp of the vintage Cabernet Sauvignon they had ordered without asking the price. "This is the life," Dante mumbled with his mouth full. "This is where we belong, Sloane. I told you. I have a feeling about this trip. Things are turning around for the King family." I sat silently sipping my iced tea. I looked at the table. It was a grotesque display of gluttony. They had ordered the seafood tower, which stood 3 tiers high and was dripping with melting ice. They had ordered the caviar service. They had ordered steaks and sides of truffle mac and cheese. They were eating as if they were afraid the food would vanish if they stopped chewing. They were gorging themselves on a feast they could not afford. They were drinking wine that cost more than their monthly car payment. And they were doing it with an air of entitlement that made my stomach turn. My mother Genevieve was picking at a salad. She was on a diet for the photos, but she had ordered the most expensive salad on the menu, which came with gold leaf shavings. "Sloane," Genevieve said. She put her fork down. "You are not eating. You are just sitting there staring at the ocean. It is rude. We are having a family meal." "I am not hungry," I said. "You are always so moody." Genevieve sighed. She shook her head. Her gold earrings jingled. "We are in paradise. Try to have a little gratitude. The Lord hates a sullen spirit." I almost laughed. Gratitude. That was a rich word coming from a woman who had spent the last hour complaining that the linen napkins were too starch. The waiter arrived with the bill. He placed the leather folder in the center of the table with a polite bow. "Thank you," I said to him. The table went silent. The chewing stopped. The drinking stopped. The only sound was the wind and the ocean. My mother sighed a dramatic, heavy sound. She reached out with a manicured hand and slid the leather folder across the white tablecloth until it bumped against my hand. "Handle this, Sloane," she said. She did not look at me. She was looking at her reflection in her spoon. "And make sure you tip at least 20%. We do not want them thinking we are cheap." I opened the folder. The numbers stared back at me. $3,240 for lunch. $3,240 for a single meal. That was a down payment on a car. That was 3 months of rent for a struggling family. That was more money than my father made in a month of manual labor before he retired. I looked at the bill. Then I looked at them. Dante was picking his teeth with a toothpick. Bianca was reapplying her lip gloss. My father was staring at the horizon, trying to make himself invisible. They did not even flinch. They did not offer to chip in. They did not reach for their wallets. They assumed that the Bank of Sloane was open for business. They assumed that I would pay for their gluttony because I always paid, because I was the good daughter, because I was the safety net. I pulled my wallet out of my purse. My fingers brushed against the cool metal of my black American Express card. I handed the card to the waiter. "Put it on this," I said. The waiter nodded and took the card. He turned to walk back to the register. "So," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "what is the plan for the afternoon? I saw on the itinerary that the private catamaran leaves at 3:00. The table went quiet again, but this time it was a different kind of silence. It was the silence of a conspiracy. It was the silence of people who had been talking about me behind my back. "Actually," Genevieve said. She cleared her throat. She looked at Bianca, then she looked at Dante. "There has been a slight change of plans." "Change of plans?" I asked. Bianca leaned forward. She rested her elbows on the table. She gave me a smile that did not reach her eyes. It was a pitying smile, the kind of smile you give to a stray dog that you do not intend to feed. "We were talking," Bianca said, "and we think it would be better if you did not come on the boat." "Excuse me," I said. "It is nothing personal, Sloane." Bianca continued. Her voice was sickly sweet. "It is just that Jamal and I want to take some photos on the boat. You know, for the gram. We are trying to build a specific aesthetic for the family brand. We are going for a very azure vibe, very light, very airy, very pastel." I looked at her. I looked at her pale skin. I looked at her fake blonde hair. Then I looked at my own skin, my dark, rich cocoa skin. I knew exactly what she meant. "Your vibe is just so intense," Bianca said. She waved her hand vaguely in my direction. "And frankly, your look clashes with the brand we are going for. You are so corporate, so serious. And the braids, it just does not fit the soft luxury aesthetic. It ruins the composition." My mother nodded in agreement. "She is right, Sloane," Genevieve said. "You have a very heavy energy. We want the photos to look joyful. We want them to look breezy. You always look like you are analyzing a spreadsheet. It brings the mood down." Dante laughed. He took a sip of his wine. "Yeah, sis," Dante said. "You are a vibe killer. No offense, but we want to look like models out there. You look like the accountant. Just go back to the hotel and work. That is what you are good at, right? Making money so we can enjoy it." The words hit me harder than a physical slap. They were excluding me from a vacation I financed. They were kicking me off a boat I paid for. They were telling me that my face, my skin, and my presence were not good enough to be seen in their photos. But my money was good enough. My money was perfect. My money fit the aesthetic just fine. I looked at the waiter who was walking away with my card. He was about 10 feet away. I looked at Bianca. She was checking her reflection in her phone camera again, oblivious to the devastation she had just caused. Or maybe she simply did not care. I felt a cold calm wash over me. It was the same clarity I felt in the boardroom right before I destroyed a competitor. The storm inside me stopped swirling and focused into a single laser beam of rage. "Okay," I said. I stood up. I smoothed the skirt of my emerald dress. "You are right," I said. My voice was smooth. My voice was dangerous. "This trip is not about me. It is about the aesthetic." I walked over to the waiter. I intercepted him before he could reach the terminal. "Excuse me," I said. He stopped and looked at me. "Yes, madam." I reached out and plucked the black American Express card from his fingers. "There has been a mistake," I said loud enough for the table to hear. "I will not be paying for this meal." The waiter looked confused. "But madam, the bill." I pointed to the table where my family sat frozen. Their mouths were hanging open. Their eyes were wide with shock. "They will handle it," I said. "They want to experience the full luxury lifestyle, and that includes paying the bill." I turned to my family. Dante half rose from his chair. "Sloane," he shouted. "What are you doing? Give him the card." "No," I said. I smiled. A slow, genuine smile. "I would hate to ruin the vibe, Dante. I am the accountant, remember. I am the vibe killer, so I am removing my heavy energy from your presence." "But the bill," Genevieve shrieked. "It is $3,000. We do not have that kind of money." I shrugged. "Then maybe you should not have ordered the lobster," I said. "Sloane." Bianca gasped. "You cannot do this. We are family." I looked at Bianca. I looked at her fake Chanel earrings. I looked at the grease on her chin. "I do not fit the aesthetic, Bianca," I said, "and neither does my credit card. Enjoy the boat. I hope the photos are worth it." I turned my back on them. "Sloane!" My mother screamed. "Sloane, come back here this instant. I command you. I am your mother." I kept walking. I walked out of the restaurant and into the bright Mexican sunlight. The sound of their panic faded behind me, but the sense of satisfaction was growing with every step. I did not go to the hotel room. I stopped in the shade of a large palm tree near the entrance of the resort. I pulled out my phone. My hands were steady. My heart was beating a rhythm of war. I opened my banking app. I tapped the image of the Black American Express card. I selected the controls menu. I saw the switch that said lock card. I did not hesitate. I did not feel guilt. I felt power. I toggled the switch. Immediately a notification popped up on my screen. Card frozen. All new transactions will be declined. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of jasmine and victory. I watched from the distance as the waiter returned to the table. I saw him shaking his head. I saw Dante slamming his hand on the table. I saw my mother frantically digging through her purse, which I knew contained nothing but lipstick and tissues. The show was just beginning. I turned and walked away. My head was high, my back was straight. The Bank of Sloane was permanently closed, and the foreclosure process had just begun. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was a text message from my assistant, Kenna, back in Chicago. "Are you surviving the family reunion?" Kenna asked. I typed back a single sentence. "I just fired the clients." I put the phone away. I had a dinner reservation to get to. And for the first time in my life, I was going to eat alone, and I was going to savor every single bite. I stood in the shade of a massive fan palm tree 50 feet away from the restaurant entrance. The fronds cast jagged shadows across my face. I held my phone in my hand like a detonator. My thumb hovered over the screen. The banking application was open. The interface was sleek and dark. The numbers on the screen represented my life energy. They represented the 80-hour weeks. They represented the missed birthdays. They represented the ulcers and the anxiety attacks. My family saw those numbers as a harvest. They thought they were entitled to reap what they had not sown. I tapped the image of the Black American Express card. A menu slid up from the bottom of the screen. I saw the option. Lock card. It was a small toggle switch currently set to green. Green meant go. Green meant yes. Green meant the Bank of Sloane was open for abuse. I took a deep breath. The air tasted of salt and impending justice. I pressed the toggle. The app asked for confirmation. "Are you sure you want to freeze this card? All recurring transactions and new purchases will be declined immediately." I looked over my shoulder toward the restaurant terrace. I could see the back of my mother head. She was laughing at something Bianca said. She was probably already planning her next purchase. She was probably thinking about how she would brag to the church choir about the lobster she did not pay for. I tapped yes. The little green toggle slid to the left and turned gray. A banner appeared at the top of the screen. Card frozen. I felt a shiver run down my spine. It was not fear. It was the thrill of cutting the cord. It was the feeling of a prisoner finding the key to her own cell. I stayed in the shadows and watched. The waiter walked back to the table. He was holding the black folder. He did not look happy. He looked professional, but stern. He leaned down and whispered something to my brother Dante. I saw Dante stiffen. He laughed nervously. He waved his hand dismissively and pointed toward the exit where I had just walked. He was telling the waiter that I would be right back. He was telling him that the rich sister was just in the bathroom. The waiter shook his head. He placed the folder back on the table. He tapped it with his index finger. Dante stood up. He was aggressive now. He was puffing out his chest. He was trying to use intimidation to cover his embarrassment. My mother stopped eating. She turned around, scanning the restaurant for me. She looked confused. Then she looked annoyed. Then she looked panicked. Bianca was digging through her oversized tote bag. I knew exactly what she would find: a tube of lip gloss, a hairbrush, and a wallet that contained a debit card with a negative balance. The waiter signaled to the manager. A tall man in a blue suit began walking toward the table. The show was just beginning. I turned and walked away. I did not need to see the rest. I knew the script. They would argue. They would threaten to call corporate. They would try to bully the staff. But in the end, they would have to face the reality of their own poverty. I walked through the lush gardens of the resort. The path was lined with hibiscus flowers and expensive sculptures. I needed to get away from the main building. I needed silence, but peace was a luxury I could not yet afford. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was a FaceTime request. Mom. I stared at the screen. She was calling me. She was probably still at the table, held hostage by the bill. She was calling to scream at me to come back and fix it. I declined the call. 5 seconds later, she called again. I declined it again. Then a text message popped up. Sloane, answer the phone right now. It is an emergency. I stopped walking. An emergency. With my mother, everything was an emergency. A broken nail was a crisis. A rainy day was a tragedy. I sighed and accepted the call on the third ring. I held the phone up. I expected to see the white tablecloth of the restaurant. I expected to see the angry face of the manager, but I did not see the restaurant. I saw handbags, dozens of them. My mother was not at the table. She had snuck away. While Dante and Bianca were distracted by the bill, she must have slipped out to visit the luxury shopping promenade attached to the hotel. She was standing in the middle of the Gucci boutique. The lighting was golden and flattering. Behind her, shelves of leather bags were displayed like museum artifacts. Sloane! She shrieked. Her face filled the screen. She was sweating. Her eyes were wild. What is wrong with your card? It is not working. I looked at her. The audacity was breathtaking. She had left her son and daughter-in-law to deal with a $3,000 lunch bill, so she could go shopping for a bag she did not need. The card is fine, Mom, I said, my voice ice cold. I locked it. You what? She screamed. The sound distorted on the speaker. Unlock it immediately. I am at the register. I have the limited edition Dionysus bag in my hand. It is $4,500, Sloane. It is the last one in Mexico. The sales lady is waiting. You are embarrassing me. I looked closely at the screen. I saw the sales associate standing behind the counter. She was a young woman with dark hair and a polite, frozen smile. She looked uncomfortable. She was holding the card reader, which was flashing a red error light. I am not unlocking it, I said. You have a closet full of bags you never use. You do not need a $4,500 bag, and you certainly do not need me to buy it for you. My mother's face turned a deep, ugly shade of crimson. How dare you, she hissed. I am your mother. I gave you life. I wiped your bottom. You owe me this. This is my reward for raising you. Now unlock the card before I make a scene. You are already making a scene, I said. She turned the camera around. She pointed it at the sales associate. Tell her. My mother commanded the poor girl. Tell my daughter that this is a mistake. Tell her to authorize the charge. The sales associate looked at the camera. She looked terrified. Madam, please, the girl said softly. The card has been declined by the issuer. We cannot process the transaction. My mother snatched the phone back. See? She yelled. You are humiliating me in front of these people. They think we are broke, Sloane. They think we are trash. Fix this. Fix it now. I looked at the sales associate again. I saw the name tag pinned to her blazer. It read Elena. I switched languages. I had spent 4 years studying business Spanish in college. I spent my summers interning in Madrid. My family knew I spoke Spanish, but they never cared enough to ask me about it. They thought it was just another one of my white girl hobbies. Now it was my weapon. Elena, I said clearly. The girl looked up surprised to hear her name. Yes, she asked. I am going to speak to you in Spanish now, I said in fluent Spanish. Can you hear me? Elena's eyes widened. "Yes, madam. I can hear you. Listen to me carefully." I continued in Spanish, my voice calm and authoritative. "The woman holding the phone is not the owner of that card. I am the owner. I have locked the card because she is attempting to use it without my permission." Elena nodded slowly. Her professional mask slipped just a little, revealing relief. "I understand," Elena replied in Spanish. "She is very confused." I lied smoothly. "She suffers from episodes of delusion. She thinks she has money that she does not have. Please do not sell her the bag, and please call security to escort her out gently. She can be very aggressive when she is denied what she wants." My mother was watching the sales associate face. She saw the change in expression. She saw the nod. She did not understand the words, but she understood the tone. She knew she was losing control. "What are you saying?" my mother demanded. She shook the phone. "Stop speaking that jibber-jabber. Speak English. Tell her to swipe it again." I switched back to English. "I told her to decline the sale, Mom," I said. My mother's mouth fell open. "You did what?" "I told her you are not authorized to use my money, because you are not." The sales associate stepped out from behind the counter. She signaled to a large man in a black suit standing by the door. "Madam," the associate said firmly, "I am afraid I cannot complete this sale. The card owner has reported this as an unauthorized attempt. I must ask you to leave the merchandise on the counter and exit the store." My mother looked at the girl. Then she looked at the security guard who was walking toward her. "This is my daughter card," she sputtered. "She is on the phone. Sloane, tell them. Tell them who I am. I am telling them exactly who you are, Mom," I said. "You are a thief." The security guard reached her. He placed a hand on her elbow. "Madam," he said, "please come with me." My mother jerked her arm away. "Do not touch me. Do you know who I am? I am a platinum member. I am a VIP. You are trespassing," the guard said. He took her arm again firmly this time. He began to guide her toward the glass doors. My mother's face was contorted with rage and humiliation. She looked into the phone camera, her eyes bulging. "I will never forgive you for this," she screamed. "You are dead to me, Sloane. Do you hear me?" "Dead." "Good," I said. "Then you will not need my money for the funeral." I pressed the red button and ended the call. I stood in the garden. The silence rushed back in to fill the space where her screaming had been. My heart was pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. My hands were shaking. I had done it. I had actually done it. I had humiliated my mother in a Gucci store. I had stranded my brother at a restaurant. I had detonated the nuclear option. I sat down on a stone bench. I stared at the phone screen. It was black and reflective. I saw my own face staring back at me. I looked exhausted, but I also looked free. For 32 years I had been the family bank. I had been the fixer. I had been the one who smoothed over the rough edges of their reality with cash. I had bought their love. I had rented their respect. And the moment the payment stopped, the love evaporated. It hurt. It hurt like a physical wound. It felt like someone had reached into my chest and ripped out a vital organ. But it was a clean pain. It was the pain of setting a bone that had healed wrong. It was necessary. I stood up. I smoothed my cover up. I checked my reflection in the phone. My eyes were dry. I had a dinner to get ready for. Tonight I was dining at the chef table. Tonight I was wearing my emerald silk gown. Tonight I was going to drink champagne that I paid for, and I was going to drink it alone. My family was about to find out what life looked like when the credit limit was 0. I began to walk back toward the hotel lobby. As I passed the main driveway, I saw a commotion. Dante and Bianca were arguing with the restaurant manager near the valet stand. Bianca was crying mascara running down her cheeks. Dante was waving his arms, shouting about a wire transfer that was coming any minute. I watched them for a second. They looked small. They looked pathetic. They looked like strangers. I put my sunglasses on and walked past them. I did not stop. I did not look back. The bank was closed, and the owner was going on vacation. The sun had set over Cabo San Lucas, but the heat remained. It hung in the air like a heavy velvet curtain. I stood in front of the full-length mirror in my suite. I was no longer the tired crisis manager who had been kicked out of a lunch reservation. I was a weapon forged in the fires of their disrespect. I had changed into a floor-length emerald silk gown. It was the kind of dress that did not just drape over the body. It flowed like liquid money. The deep green fabric made my dark skin look luminous. It had a slit that went up to my thigh and a neckline that plunged just enough to be dangerous. I paired it with gold stiletto heels that cost more than my brother Dante leased sedan. I applied a coat of dark berry lipstick. I looked at my reflection. "You are not their daughter tonight," I whispered to the glass. "You are their creditor, and the bill is due." I grabbed my clutch. It was a small gold box that held only my phone and the black American Express card. I walked out of the room. The sound of my heels clicking against the marble hallway echoed like the ticking of a countdown clock. I walked down the grand staircase toward the lobby. The Azure was the resort Michelin-starred restaurant. It was the crown jewel of the property. I had made this reservation 6 months ago to celebrate my parents' anniversary. I had planned to toast to their health. Now I planned to toast to their insolvency. They were waiting for me near the host stand. They had clearly recovered from the afternoon drama. Or rather, they had convinced themselves that my outburst was temporary. They were banking on my history. They were banking on the fact that I always came back. They were banking on the fact that I always paid. My mother, Genevieve, was wearing a sequined gown that was 2 sizes too small. She was fanning herself with a brochure. Dante was wearing a white dinner jacket that looked like he had rented it from a high school prom catalog. And Bianca was wearing a white lace dress that looked bridal. She was desperate to be the center of attention even at a family dinner. They saw me approaching. I saw the relief wash over their faces. They thought I had cracked. They thought the emerald dress meant I was ready to apologize and open the wallet again. "Sloane!" Bianca called out. She waved me over with a frantic little motion. "You look nice." A little dramatic for a family dinner, but nice. I did not smile. I did not speed up. I walked toward them with the slow, deliberate pace of a judge entering a courtroom. "We were worried about you," Genevieve said. She reached out to touch my arm, but I stepped out of range. "You disappeared for hours. We thought you might have done something foolish like gone to the airport. But I told Dante. I said Sloane is a good girl. She just needed a nap. She knows she cannot ruin this night for us. We are starving." Dante grumbled. He adjusted his tie. "Let us go in. I want to order the Wagyu beef. I heard it costs $400 a steak." Bianca leaned in close to me. Her voice dropped to a hushed whisper, so the other guests standing nearby would not hear. "Listen, Sloane," Bianca said. She smoothed her fake blonde hair. "We were talking while we got dressed. We think it might be better if you sat at a different table tonight." I looked at her. The audacity was almost intoxicating. It was so pure, so unfiltered. "Excuse me," I asked. My voice was calm. "It is nothing personal," Bianca said quickly, "but this dinner is supposed to be a celebration of our future, of the family legacy, and frankly, your energy is still very heavy. You look angry, and that dress, it is very attention-seeking. It kind of ruins the soft family aesthetic we are trying to capture for the album. You understand, right?" She blinked her blue contact lenses at me. I looked at my mother. I waited for her to defend me. I waited for her to say that excluding her daughter from a family dinner was ridiculous. Instead, she avoided my gaze. She adjusted her pearls. "It is a special night for Dante and Bianca," my mother mumbled. "Maybe it would be more comfortable for everyone if we had a little space just for tonight. You can still pay the bill, of course. We will just send it to your table." They wanted my money to pay for the dinner, but they did not want my face at the table. I smiled. It was a slow, dangerous smile that did not reach my eyes. "You are absolutely right," I said. "I would hate to ruin the aesthetic. I will sit elsewhere." Bianca let out a breath she had been holding. "Oh, good. I knew you would understand. You are so reasonable when you want to be." I walked past them to the host stand. The manager was a man named Alessandro. I had helped him navigate a public relations crisis 2 years ago when a celebrity chef walked out on his contract at another property. He owed me, and he knew it. Alessandro looked up from the podium. His face lit up when he saw me. "Ms. King," he exclaimed. He came around the podium to shake my hand. "It is an honor to have you back. You look magnificent. We have prepared the chef table for your family as requested. It is the best seat in the house." My family stepped forward. They were beaming. They looked around at the opulent dining room ready to claim their throne. "Actually, Alessandro," I said loud enough for my family to hear, "there has been a change." Alessandro paused. "A change?" "Yes," I said. "My family will be dining at their reserved table, but I will be dining alone. Please set me up on the terrace, the private table overlooking the ocean." Alessandro looked at me. He looked at my family. He was a professional. He sensed the tension immediately. He saw the cold steel in my eyes. "Of course, Ms. King," Alessandro said, "and the billing. I am treating myself tonight," I said clearly. "Make sure the checks are completely separate. I am not responsible for their table." Alessandro nodded. "Understood." "Right this way, Ms. King." "Wait," Dante said. He stepped forward. "Separate checks." "What do you mean separate checks?" I turned to him. "I mean I am paying for my dinner, Dante," I said. "And you are paying for yours. Since I am not sitting with you, I am certainly not paying for you." "But the card," Genevieve stammered. "You unlocked it right. You were just being dramatic earlier." I just smiled. "Enjoy the Wagyu. I hear it melts in your mouth." I followed Alessandro to the terrace. I walked with my head high. I felt their eyes burning into my back. I knew they were panicking. I knew they were doing mental math. But I also knew their greed was stronger than their fear. They would sit down. They would order. They would hope that I would soften up by dessert and pay the bill like I always did. They were wrong. I sat at a table with the best view of the ocean. The moonlight danced on the black water. The air was cool and fresh. I saw them being seated near the kitchen doors. It was the worst table in the restaurant. It was noisy. It was high traffic. And it smelled of dish soap. I watched them glaring at me across the dining room, but they sat down. They opened the menus. I saw the waiter approach their table. I saw Dante pointing at the most expensive items on the menu. I saw Bianca ordering a bottle of champagne. I saw my mother ordering the seafood tower again. They were ordering indiscriminately. They were eating like kings on a pauper budget. I ordered the tasting menu for one. I ordered a bottle of Dom Perignon Vintage 2008. I ate slowly. I savored every bite. The scallop carpaccio tasted like the ocean. The truffle risotto tasted like the earth. The Wagyu beef tasted like victory. I watched them gorge themselves. They were laughing now. They were drunk on expensive wine and entitlement. They had convinced themselves that everything was fine. They had convinced themselves that Sloane would never let them be embarrassed. When I finished my dessert, a dark chocolate soufflé with gold dust, I signaled for my check. Alessandro brought it himself. "Thank you, Alessandro," I said. I signed the receipt. I added a $500 tip. "It was a pleasure, Ms. King," he said. I stood up. It was time. I walked across the dining room. I had to pass their table to get to the exit. They saw me coming. They stopped laughing. They wiped the grease from their mouths. "Sloane," Genevieve called out. She held up her empty wine glass. "Are you leaving already? Come sit for a minute. Have a drink with us. We saved you a piece of bread." I stopped. I looked at the table. It was a disaster zone of empty shells and dirty plates. "No, thank you," I said. "I am tired. I am going back to my suite." The waiter arrived at their table. He placed a black leather folder in the center of the mess. The bill. My mother reached for it. She expected to see my card inside, or she expected me to take it from her hand and wave it away. She opened it. I saw her eyes widen. I saw the color drain from her face beneath the heavy makeup. $1,500. She looked up at me. Her hand was trembling. "Sloane," she said. Her voice was thin and high. "You need to handle this before you go." I adjusted my gold clutch. "I believe we established that this trip is not about me, Mom," I said. "And since I ruined the aesthetic, I certainly should not be involved in the payment." Dante stood up. His chair scraped loudly against the floor. "Stop playing games, Sloane," he said. His voice was aggressive. "The card is still locked. I tried to order a cigar earlier and it declined. Unlock it. Now." "No," I said. "What do you mean, no?" Dante shouted. People were starting to turn around. "I mean, no," I said. "I am not unlocking it. Not tonight, not tomorrow, not ever." I watched as the waiter approached with the card reader. He looked expectant. I watched my mother hand over the frozen card with a trembling hand. "Please," she whispered, "just try it again." The waiter inserted the card. The machine beeped, a harsh, low sound that cut through the jazz music. Transaction declined. The waiter said loudly, "Try it again!" Bianca shrieked. She stood up. Her bridal dress knocked over a glass of water. "It is a black card. It has no limit. It has a limit when the owner sets one," I said. The waiter looked at me. He looked at them. "Do you have another form of payment?" he asked. My father patted his pockets. He looked helpless. He looked like a man who knew he was drowning. We do not have cash on us," Otis stammered. I stepped back. "Good luck," I said. "You cannot leave us here." Bianca wailed. "They will call the police." "Sloane, please." I looked at Bianca. I looked at the woman who had mocked my hair. I looked at the woman who had kicked me off the boat. "You wanted a separate table," I said, cold as ice. "You wanted space. You wanted an aesthetic. Well, this is the reality of your aesthetic, Bianca. It is expensive, and you cannot afford it." I turned around. "Sloane," my mother screamed. "Sloane, I command you to come back here." I kept walking. I walked out of the restaurant and into the cool night air. I left them to explain to Alessandro why they had eaten a king ransom with empty pockets. I did not stay to see them scramble. I did not stay to see them check their empty bank accounts. I did not stay to see the security guards approach their table. I walked back to my suite. The sound of the ocean crashing against the rocks was the only music I needed. I entered my room and locked the door. I poured myself a glass of water. I walked out to the balcony. I looked down at the resort. I could see the lights of the restaurant terrace. I could see a commotion near the kitchen doors. I could see figures being escorted out. I took a sip of water. It was over. The first battle was won. But I knew the war was just beginning. Tomorrow morning I would launch the second phase. Tomorrow morning they would wake up and realize that the hotel room was no longer a safe harbor. I went to the desk in my room. I picked up the phone. I dialed the front desk. "Concierge." A voice answered. "This is Sloane King in the penthouse suite," I said. "Yes, Ms. King. How can I help you?" "I need to make a modification to the reservation for the other rooms in my party," I said. "Certainly. Please remove the all-inclusive platinum band from their profiles," I said. "Downgrade them to the room-only basic package. Effective immediately. No breakfast add-on. No pool bar privileges. No Wi-Fi. Just the room." There was a pause on the line. "Are you sure, Ms. King?" the concierge asked. "That is a significant downgrade." "I am sure," I said. "And please make sure the system updates before 6 in the morning. I want it to be effective when they go for breakfast." "Understood. It is done. Thank you." I hung up the phone. I climbed into the massive king-sized bed. The sheets were cool and crisp. I closed my eyes. For the first time in years, I did not worry about my family. I did not worry about their bills. I did not worry about their happiness. I slept like a baby, and tomorrow I would wake up and watch them starve. The morning sun filtered through the sheer curtains of the presidential suite, painting the room in soft golds and calming blues. But the peace I felt had nothing to do with the view. I woke up with the clarity of a general surveying a battlefield the morning after a decisive victory. My family was still here technically, but the power dynamic had shifted tectonically. I dressed in my workout gear. I put on black leggings and a matching sports bra that cost $200. I looked expensive. I looked unbothered. I headed down to the main restaurant for the breakfast buffet. The spread was magnificent. It featured fresh tropical fruit and made-to-order omelets and pastries still warm from the oven. There was a mimosa station that stretched for 10 feet. I filled my plate with papaya and smoked salmon. I chose a table near the entrance, positioning myself with a perfect line of sight to the hostess stand. I wanted a front-row seat for the morning show. 20 minutes later, they appeared. They looked disheveled and hungry, likely because they had not eaten since lunch yesterday. Dante was wearing his designer sunglasses indoors, probably to hide the bags under his eyes from a sleepless night of panic. Bianca was complaining about her blood sugar. My mother Genevieve marched in front, ready to demand a table for 4 with the best view. They approached the hostess. She was a lovely woman named Maria, whom I had tipped generously the day before. "Table for 4, Genevieve announced, not asking. "And we want coffee immediately." "Strong coffee." "Certainly, madam," Maria said. Her smile was polite but tight. "May I scan your room keys for the meal plan verification?" My mother handed over her key card with a huff of impatience. Maria tapped it against the reader. A harsh, low buzz sounded from the machine. The light on the console turned a solid, unforgiving red. Maria frowned and tried again. Another buzz. Another red light. "Is there a problem?" Dante asked, stepping up. "We are starving." "I apologize," Maria said, looking at the screen. "But your room keys are flagging as basic economy. That package does not include dining privileges. This is a paid access buffet for your tier." My mother laughed. It was a shrill, nervous sound. "That is ridiculous," Genevieve said. "We are with the Presidential Suite Party. We are Platinum members. Scan it again." "I have scanned it twice, madam," Maria said, her voice cooling. "The system shows the primary account holder modified the terms at 6 in the morning. You have room access only. If you would like to eat, the cost is $75 per person payable up front." $75? Bianca shrieked. "For eggs." My father Otis patted his pockets, looking helpless. "We do not have cash on us. It is supposed to be included." "It was included," Maria said. "Until it was not. Unless you can provide a valid credit card or cash, I cannot seat you." They stood there, frozen in the doorway. The smell of bacon and fresh coffee wafted around them, taunting them. Other guests were starting to stare, waiting to get past the blockage they had created. Dante scanned the room, his eyes frantic. He was looking for a savior. He was looking for me. He saw me. I sat alone at my table near the window. I raised my coffee mug in a silent toast. Then I took a deliberate slow bite of a chocolate croissant. Dante said something to my mother, pointing at me. She turned, her face contorting with a fresh wave of fury. She started to move toward me, but Maria stepped in her path. "Madam, if you are not dining, you need to clear the entrance," Maria said firmly. "Security is just around the corner." The threat of security stopped her. They had no money, they had no leverage, and they had nowhere to go. Defeated, they turned around and shuffled out of the restaurant, the heavy wooden doors closing on their backs. I finished my breakfast in peace. The papaya tasted sweeter than usual. I returned to my suite an hour later to change for a meeting with my London team via Zoom. I felt energized, I felt light. But as I approached my door, I noticed something. The electronic lock made a soft clicking sound. I stopped. I pulled out my phone. I opened the security app connected to the sensors I had placed on my devices. I was a crisis manager. I treated my data like gold bullion. A notification flashed on my screen. Unauthorized access detected. Laptop camera active. My blood ran cold. Someone was in my room, and they were on my computer. I did not barge in. That was what an amateur would do. Instead, I leaned against the wall in the hallway and tapped the View Live Feed button on my phone. The screen flickered to life. The camera on my laptop was facing the desk chair. Sitting in that chair, hunched over the keyboard, was my brother Dante. He was sweating. Beads of perspiration rolled down his forehead. He had bypassed the lock screen, likely using the birthday password. I had not changed since high school because I foolishly thought family did not need firewalls. He was deep in my banking portal. I could see the reflection of the screen in his sunglasses. He was moving money, or trying to. I zoomed in on the feed. He was on the transfer page. He was typing in the account number for Marco, the crypto scammer from the pool. He was trying to wire $50,000. He looked terrified but determined. He looked like a man who thought he was reclaiming what was his, not stealing what was mine. I could have called hotel security. I could have stormed in and tackled him, but I wanted him to feel the fear of God. I pressed the microphone button on my phone app. My voice would be projected through the laptop speakers at maximum volume. "Get away from the computer, Dante," I said. On the screen, I saw him jump a foot in the air. He knocked over a vase of decorative reeds. He spun around looking for me. "Who is that?" he shouted. "Where are you? I am watching you." My voice boomed through the room, amplified and distorted by the speakers. "I am everywhere. Do not touch that keyboard." He looked at the laptop. His eyes were wide with panic. "Sloane," he whispered, "I am looking at the screen. Dante." I continued, my voice low and dangerous. "I see the transfer request. $50,000 to an offshore account. That is wire fraud. That is a federal crime." He swallowed hard. I was just borrowing it," he stammered, talking to the empty room. "I was going to pay you back. It is an investment, Sloane. Marco said the returns are guaranteed." "Marco is a thief," I said. "And apparently so are you. Do you know what the penalty is for international wire fraud in Mexico? It is not a slap on the wrist. It is prison. A very uncomfortable, very real prison." Dante stared at the webcam. He looked like a trapped animal. "Please," he said, "I need this. I cannot look broke in front of these people." "You are broke," I said. "And if you press enter, I will send this video recording directly to the federal police and the FBI. I will press charges, Dante. I will put my own brother in a cell before I let him steal another dime from me." He froze. His finger hovered over the enter key. He looked at the camera lens. He saw the little green light indicating he was being recorded. He saw his future flashing before his eyes. He knew I was not bluffing. Not anymore. The sister who covered for him was gone. "You are crazy," he whispered. "You are actually crazy." "Get out," I commanded. "Get out of my room before I call the front desk. You have 10 seconds. 1. He backed away from the desk. 2. He grabbed his sunglasses. 3. He bolted. He ran out of the room, leaving the door swinging open behind him. I watched on the feed as the room went empty. I lowered my phone. My hands were shaking not from fear, but from the realization that the only thing connecting us now was blood, and bad blood at that. I walked into the room. I went straight to the laptop. I canceled the pending transfer. I changed every password I owned. I set up 2-factor authentication. I locked down my digital life with the same ruthlessness I had locked down my credit card. I sat in the chair where my brother had just been stealing from me. I felt the warmth of his body still on the leather. It was disgusting. I wiped the keyboard down with a sanitizer wipe. I wiped the mouse. I wiped the desk. I wanted to scrub away the entitlement. I wanted to disinfect my life. My phone rang. It was Kenna, my assistant. "I assume you saw the alert," Kenna said. Her voice was sharp. "I did," I replied. "He tried to wire $50,000 to a shell company. Did he succeed?" "No, I caught him. I chased him out." "Good," Kenna said. "I am locking down your domestic accounts too, just in case he tries to call the bank pretending to be you. I have alerted the fraud department." "Thank you, Kenna," I said. "Sloane." Kenna softened her tone. "Are you okay?" I looked out the window at the ocean. The waves were crashing against the shore, relentless and violent. "I am fine," I said. "I am just cutting off a limb to save the body." "It hurts," Kenna said. "I know," I said. "But it is better than dying from the infection." I hung up. I stood up and walked to the closet. I pulled out my suitcase. I packed my jewelry. I packed my passport. I was not going to leave anything valuable in this room anymore. I needed fresh air. I needed to see people who were not related to me. I changed into a white linen suit. I put on my sunglasses. I walked out of the room. I headed down to the pool. Not the family pool, the exclusive VIP pool that required a separate key card. I walked through the gate. The area was quiet. There were no screaming children. There were no desperate scammers. There was only luxury. I saw a group of people sitting in a cabana. They were black. They were stylish. They were laughing. I recognized one of them. It was Julian, a tech billionaire I had met at a conference last year. He was handsome, intelligent, and incredibly wealthy. "Sloane King," Julian called out. He stood up. He was wearing silk trunks and holding a glass of champagne. "Is that the queen of crisis management I see?" "Hello, Julian," I said. I walked over. "Join us," he said. "We were just talking about the market in London. We could use your sharp mind." I looked at the empty lounger next to him. It looked inviting. It looked like a place where I would be respected. It looked like a place where I would not be asked for money. I would love to. I said. I sat down. A waiter appeared instantly. "Champagne, madam?" he asked. "Yes," I said, and put it on my tab. I took a sip of the cold bubbles. I looked around the pool. For the first time in 24 hours, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. But I knew the peace would not last. My family was hungry, my family was desperate, and desperate people did desperate things. I checked my watch. It was 2 in the afternoon. The gala was tonight. They would be there. They would try to crash it. They would try to make a scene. Let them come, I thought. I was ready. I had my receipts. I had my evidence, and I had absolutely zero mercy left to give. The evening air smelled of jasmine and money. The annual resort gala was the kind of event where the napkins were made of imported Irish linen, and the conversations were worth millions of dollars in venture capital. I was wearing a custom gown that cost more than the entire failed sneaker inventory my brother had accumulated in our garage. It was a midnight blue velvet number that hugged every curve of my body before pooling around my feet like a dark shadow. I held a glass of vintage champagne that sparkled under the string lights that were strung between the palm trees like diamonds. I was not just a guest here. I was a player. I stood near the edge of the terrace, engaged in a conversation with Julian. He was a tech billionaire I had met at a summit in Davos the year before. He was tall, with skin the color of obsidian, and a smile that could disarm a nuclear warhead. He was wearing a tuxedo that fit him with the precision of a mathematical equation. "So let me get this straight," Julian said, leaning in slightly. His voice was a low rumble that vibrated in my chest. "You handled the crisis for the Henderson merger in 48 hours. You are the one who leaked the counter-narrative to the press." I took a sip of champagne. The bubbles danced on my tongue. "I cannot confirm or deny my involvement," I said with a coy smile. "But let us just say that I know how to control a story. When the narrative gets messy, I am the one who brings out the bleach." Julian laughed. It was a genuine sound. It was the laugh of a man who was used to being the smartest person in the room and was delighted to find an equal. "You are dangerous, Sloane King," he said. "I like that. Most people are terrified of chaos. You seem to thrive in it." "I do not thrive in chaos, Julian," I said. "I domesticate it." He looked at me with an intensity that made my breath hitch. For the first time in a very long time, I felt seen. He did not see a bank account. He did not see a safety net. He saw a woman who was his match. We were laughing at a shared joke about Silicon Valley startups when a commotion near the garden entrance caught my eye. It started as a ripple in the crowd. A few guests in tuxedos and ball gowns stepped aside with looks of distaste. The soft jazz music seemed to falter for a second as the murmur of confusion spread through the party. Then I saw them. They looked like a cautionary tale. My family had arrived. My mother Genevieve was leading the charge. She was wearing a floral sundress that was wrinkled and stained with sweat. Her hair, which was usually coiffed to perfection within an inch of its life, was frizzy from the humidity. It stood up around her head like a halo of static electricity. She was missing one of her earrings. Dante was right behind her. He was wearing cargo shorts and a graphic t-shirt that looked like he had slept in it. He probably had given that their new accommodation likely did not have laundry service. He was sweating profusely. His face was slick and shiny under the gala lights. He was dragging a suitcase behind him. The wheels rumbled loudly over the polished marble tiles of the terrace. And then there was Bianca. She was limping. One of the heels on her wedges had snapped off, leaving her with a lopsided gait. She was clutching her fake Chanel bag like a shield. Her makeup was running down her face in dark streaks, giving her the appearance of a melting wax figure. My father Otis trailed behind them, looking like a man marching to his own execution. They had clearly snuck past the perimeter security. They probably came through the kitchen service entrance or climbed a landscaping wall. They stood out against the backdrop of diamonds and tuxedos like an ink stain on a white silk sheet. Julian followed my gaze. He frowned. "Security seems to have a breach," he said quietly. "Who let the tourists in?" My stomach dropped. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. It was not shame. It was rage. Pure, unadulterated rage. I had cut them off. I had evicted them from my life. And yet here they were, intruding on my peace, like cockroaches surviving a nuclear blast. Then their eyes locked on me. It was Bianca who spotted me first. She pointed a manicured finger, her face twisting into a mask of pure malice. "There she is," she shrieked. Her voice cut through the soft jazz music like a serrated knife. Conversations stopped, heads turned. Julian stopped talking mid-sentence. He turned to look, his brow furrowing in confusion. "Is there a problem, Sloane?" he asked. Before I could answer, they were charging toward us. They did not care about the dignitaries or the investors or the security protocols. They were fueled by hunger. They were fueled by heat. They were fueled by exhaustion. And above all, they were fueled by the delusional belief that they were the victims. Sloane. My mother screamed. She pushed past a waiter holding a tray of hors d'oeuvres. The tray crashed to the floor, sending shrimp cocktails flying onto the polished marble. The sound of shattering glass echoed like a gunshot. "You wicked girl," Genevieve yelled. She was 20 feet away now, closing the distance with terrifying speed. "How dare you eat caviar while your mother starves in a roach motel?" The entire gala fell silent. Hundreds of eyes turned toward us. The band stopped playing. Dante was right behind her, his face red with exertion and anger. "Give us the code to the card, Sloane," he shouted. "We need to book a flight home. This is not funny anymore. You stranded us. You left us to rot." Security was already moving in. 4 large men in black suits were converging on my family from different angles. But my family was close enough now that I could smell them. They smelled of stale sweat. They smelled of desperation. They smelled of the cheap industrial cleaning products of the Motel Las Palmas. Julian looked at me. Then he looked at the screaming banshees approaching us. He looked back at me. "Sloane," he asked, his voice low and concerned. "Do you know these people?" Time seemed to slow down. I looked at my mother. Her face was distorted with rage and entitlement. This was the woman who had guilt-tripped me for decades. This was the woman who claimed she sacrificed everything for me, but really just viewed me as her retirement plan. I looked at my brother. He had stolen from me for 10 years. He had mocked my career. He had tried to steal $50,000 from my laptop just this morning. I looked at my father, who had watched it all happen, and said nothing. And I looked at Bianca. The woman who mocked my skin tone. The woman who said I ruined the aesthetic. They expected me to crumble. They expected me to apologize to Julian. They expected me to pull out my wallet to save them from the humiliation they had brought upon themselves just to make the scene stop. They were banking on my shame. They were banking on the fact that blood is thicker than water. But they forgot one thing. I fix crises for a living. I know exactly how to cut a liability loose. I know how to sever a gangrenous limb to save the patient. I took a sip of my champagne. I looked Julian dead in the eye. I did not blink. I delivered the line that would sever the final thread, the line that would burn the bridge so thoroughly that not even ashes would remain. "I have never seen these people in my life," I said. My voice was steady and loud enough for the security team to hear. My mother stopped dead in her tracks. Her mouth fell open. She looked like she had been slapped. "What?" she gasped. "Sloane, I am your mother." I stepped back, smoothing my gown. I turned to the head guard who had just reached us. His name was Marcus. I knew him. I tipped him well. "Security," I said. My tone was imperious. "These intruders are harassing me and my guest. Please remove them from the premises immediately. But we are family." Bianca wailed. She tried to grab my arm. Her fingers were greasy. "You cannot do this." I stepped out of her reach. I looked at her as if she were a piece of gum stuck to the bottom of my shoe. "I do not know who you are," I said, cold as ice, "but you are trespassing." The guards did not hesitate. Liability was their nightmare, and I had just given them permission to act. They grabbed Dante by the arms as he tried to lunge at me. "Get off me!" Dante shouted, struggling against the grip of the guard. "Tell them, Sloane. Tell them who we are. Tell them I am your brother." I turned my back on them. I looked at Julian. I gave him a small, apologetic smile and shrugged one shoulder elegantly. "I am so sorry about the disturbance, Julian," I said. "The resort really needs to improve their perimeter security. The locals can be quite aggressive when they target tourists. They must have mistaken me for someone else." Julian looked at the screaming family being dragged away. He looked at Dante, who was kicking and screaming profanities. He looked at my mother, who was wailing about injustice. Then he looked at me. He saw the steel in my spine. He saw the absolute refusal to be a victim. "Understandable," Julian said. He nodded slowly. "Shall we continue our discussion on the terrace?" he asked, offering me his arm. I took it. As we walked away, the sounds of my family screaming my name faded into the distance. They were being dragged out the side exit, kicked out of paradise for the second time in 24 hours. I did not look back. I did not feel a single pang of guilt. I felt lighter than air. The security guards had almost reached the service gate with my struggling family in tow when Bianca played her final desperate card. She dug her heels into the manicured lawn, ripping the hem of her cheap white dress. She let out a scream that curdled the blood of everyone within a 100-yard radius. "Stop!" She shrieked, her voice cracking with hysteria. "You are hurting me! I am pregnant!" The words hung in the humid air like a toxic cloud. The guards hesitated. Their grips loosened slightly on her arms. Liability is the one thing security teams fear more than unruly guests. A lawsuit involving a miscarriage was a public relations nightmare that no resort wanted to handle. My mother, seizing the opportunity with the instinct of a predator sensing blood, wrenched herself free from the guard holding her. She smoothed her frizzy hair and pointed a trembling finger at me. "Did you hear that, Sloane?" she screamed. "She is carrying your niece or nephew. You are throwing your own flesh and blood out into the street. You are trying to kill my grandchild." The guests on the terrace began to murmur. I could feel the shift in the atmosphere. Minutes ago, they viewed my family as intruders. Now they viewed them as victims. A pregnant woman was a sympathetic figure no matter how tacky her dress was. Julian stiffened beside me. He looked at me, his eyes searching for an explanation. "Sloane," he said softly, "if she is pregnant, we cannot just throw her out. That is dangerous." I looked at Dante. My brother's face had transformed. He stopped struggling. He puffed his chest out, finding a new reserve of righteous indignation. He looked at Bianca with a mixture of shock and protective pride. He clearly had not known she was going to announce it tonight, but he was ready to ride the wave. "You heard her," Dante bellowed. "Get your hands off my wife. She is carrying the heir to the King family. Sloane, you have gone too far. This is criminal." Bianca was sobbing now. She was curled into a ball on the grass, clutching her stomach. It was a performance worthy of an Academy Award. "My baby," she wailed. "My poor baby. The stress is too much." I felt a cold calm settle over me. It was the same feeling I got when I looked at a balance sheet and found a discrepancy. I knew the numbers did not add up. I signaled for the guards to wait. I released Julian's arm. "Excuse me for a moment, Julian," I said. "I need to clarify a medical detail." I walked slowly toward them. The gravel crunched beneath my heels. The sound was rhythmic and ominous. I stopped 3 feet away from Bianca. She looked up at me. Her mascara was smeared. She was panting. But beneath the tears, I saw a glint of triumph. She thought she had won. She thought the biology card trumped the credit card. She thought I would crumble at the idea of an innocent baby. But I knew something she did not. I knew everything. I had hired a forensic accountant and a private investigator 3 weeks before this trip. I wanted to know exactly where my money was going. "That is truly a medical marvel, Bianca," I said. My voice was calm. It carried clearly in the sudden silence of the garden. Bianca narrowed her eyes. "What is that supposed to mean?" "It is a miracle," I said. "God has blessed us despite your cruelty." I pulled my phone out of my clutch. I did not need to look for the file. I had memorized it. But I wanted them to see it. I wanted them to see the receipts. I unlocked the screen. I pulled up the document titled Medical Audit. I held the phone up facing Dante. The screen was bright in the dim evening light. "It is a marvel," I continued, "because according to the medical records obtained during my due diligence audit of your debts, you underwent a procedure at Northside Women Clinic on February 14th, 2 years ago." The silence that followed was heavier than the humidity. It was the silence of a guillotine blade hovering at the top of its arc. Dante squinted at the screen. He could not read the small text from where he stood. "What are you talking about?" Dante asked. I read from the report. My voice was crisp and professional. "Patient Bianca King, Procedure bilateral tubal ligation. Patient requested permanent sterilization via cauterization. Cost $2,500 paid out of pocket because the insurance policy listed it as elective. Bianca's face went from flushed to a sickly pale gray. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked at Dante. Then she looked at my mother. Then she looked back at me, searching for a lie that could cover a truth this absolute. "That is a lie," she whispered, but her voice lacked any conviction. "You forged that. I have the invoice number, Bianca," I said, cold as ice. "I have the name of the surgeon, Dr. Henderson. I have the receipt for the Vicodin prescription you filled at CVS the next day." I turned to my brother. "You remember that weekend, right, Dante?" I asked. "She told you she was going to a spa retreat for Valentine's Day. She told you she needed to relax because she was stressed about conceiving." Dante was staring at his wife. The realization was washing over him in slow, agonizing waves. He had been bragging to his friends about his virility. He had been talking about building a legacy. He had been talking about the son he was going to have. And more importantly, he had been paying for it. "You told me you were ovulating," Dante whispered. His voice was trembling. I continued to twist the knife. "She told you she was trying for a baby every month since then," I said. "She asked you for money for fertility treatments. She asked you for money for supplements. She asked you for money for acupuncture." I looked at the financial spreadsheet on my phone. Total cost of fertility-related expenses in the last 24 months is $18,000, I said. I looked at Bianca. "You were just pocketing the cash, were you not?" I asked. "You were taking the money I gave Dante to help him start a family, and you were buying fake Chanel bags and getting lip injections." Dante looked at Bianca. He looked at the woman who had helped him spend every dime I ever gave them. He looked at the woman who had just lied about a pregnancy to save her own skin. "You got your tubes tied?" Dante asked. His voice was barely a whisper. "2 years ago." "Baby, she is lying," Bianca stammered. She reached for his leg. "She is just trying to break us up. It was a cyst. I had a cyst removed." I swiped on my phone. "Here is the post-operative summary, Bianca," I read aloud. Patient expressed relief that she would no longer have to worry about unwanted pregnancies. The snap was audible. It was the sound of Dante's ego shattering into a million jagged pieces. He did not look at me. He did not look at the guards. He looked at the liar on the grass. "You played me," he roared. The sound was animalistic. It was the sound of a man who realized he was not the player, but the mark. Before the guards could react, before my mother could intervene, Dante swung his hand. The slap echoed across the garden like a gunshot. It struck Bianca across the face with enough force to knock her flat against the turf. She screamed, clutching her cheek. "You useless, lying leech!" Dante shouted, standing over her. His hands were shaking. "I gave you everything. I stole from my sister for you. I humiliated myself for you, and you made me look like a fool." He raised his foot to kick her. "Restrain him," I ordered. The security guards tackled him instantly. They slammed him into the turf next to his weeping wife. They pressed his face into the dirt. My mother was screaming. She was tearing at her hair, wailing that her family was being destroyed. My father stood frozen, watching the violence with the detached horror of a man who realizes he has raised a monster. I watched them writhing on the ground. They were turning on each other the moment the money ran out. The snake was finally eating its own tail. Dante was shouting profanities. Bianca was sobbing about her face. My mother was praying loudly to Jesus. It was chaos. It was ugly. And it was exactly what they deserved. Julian walked up behind me. He placed a hand on the small of my back. His touch was warm and grounding. "Are you okay?" he asked. I looked at the pile of humanity on the grass. "I am better than okay, Julian," I said. "I am vindicated." I turned to the head of security. "Get them out of here," I said, "and call the local police. I believe that was assault, and since they are no longer guests of this resort, I assume you have a protocol for trespassers who commit violence on the property." "Yes, Ms. King," the guard said. "We will handle it." I looked at my mother one last time. She was looking at me with eyes full of hate. "You did this," she screamed. "You planned this." "I did not plan your lies, Mom," I said. "I just exposed them." I turned around. I took Julian's arm. "Shall we go back to the party?" I asked. I believe they are serving dessert." Julian looked at me with a mixture of awe and fear. He nodded slowly. "Remind me never to lie to you, Sloane," he said. "That would be a wise policy," I replied. We walked back toward the terrace. The music started playing again. The conversation resumed. The world of wealth and privilege closed ranks around us, sealing out the ugliness of the desperate family being dragged into the back of a police van. As we stepped onto the marble dance floor, I heard the distant siren of the Mexican police approaching. It sounded like a victory song. For the first time in 32 years, I was not the one crying. I was not the one paying. I was the one dancing. And as Julian spun me around under the starlight, I felt the heavy weight of obligation slip off my shoulders and shatter on the floor. I was free. I landed in Chicago 3 hours ahead of schedule thanks to a generous tailwind and the efficiency of a premium airline. I breezed through the priority line at customs, where the officer greeted me with a polite nod instead of a suspicious glare. My driver was waiting for me at the curb. He loaded my Toomey luggage into the trunk of the black sedan with white-gloved hands. I slid into the back seat. The leather was cool. The air smelled of citrus. I closed my eyes and allowed myself a moment of pure, selfish silence. I did not go to the house. Not yet. I went to my penthouse in the city. I showered. I washed the Mexican humidity and the lingering scent of family drama off my skin. I changed into a white power suit that was tailored to within an inch of its life. It was crisp. It was clean. It was the uniform of a woman who was about to execute a hostile takeover. I checked my phone. The tracking app showed that their flight had just landed. My family had not been so lucky. After being ejected from the resort and escorted off the premises by local police, they had spent 6 hours in a cramped waiting room at the Cabo airport. They had scrambled to pool their remaining cash and maxed out emergency credit cards to buy 4 tickets on a budget carrier known for delays and seats designed for people without legs. They flew the red-eye. They had a layover in Houston and another in Cleveland. They sat in the very last row right next to the lavatories, where the smell of chemical disinfectant mixed with the odor of 150 exhausted travelers. I watched the little dots on my GPS map move from the airport toward the suburbs. They did not take a black car. They took a beat-up taxi that likely smelled of stale cigarettes. I signaled my driver. "It is time," I said. "Take me to Oak Creek Drive." I arrived at the house 10 minutes before them. I parked my car 3 houses down. I lowered the tinted window just enough to see, but not enough to be seen. The street was quiet. It was a manicured suburban paradise, where the lawns were cut diagonally and the trash cans were hidden behind tasteful wooden enclosures. It was the kind of neighborhood my mother Genevieve loved because it allowed her to pretend she was aristocracy. Then the taxi turned the corner. It was a yellow minivan with a dented fender. It rattled as it drove over the speed bump. It pulled up to the curb in front of the 2-story colonial house that my parents called home. The doors slid open. They spilled out onto the sidewalk like garbage falling from a dumpster. My mother stepped out first. She was wearing the same floral dress from the night before, but now it was stained with airplane coffee and wrinkled beyond recognition. Her hair was matted on one side from sleeping against a plastic window shade. She looked 10 years older than she had 2 days ago. Dante crawled out next. He was carrying a neck pillow that looked gray and grimy. He stretched his back and winced. He looked defeated, but beneath the exhaustion I could see the simmering rage. He was ready to blame someone. He was ready to blame everyone except himself. Bianca stumbled out last. She was not wearing her heels. She was barefoot. Her feet were swollen. She was holding her fake Chanel bag, which now had a deep scratch across the logo. She did not look at Dante. She did not look at my parents. She stared at the house with a hunger that was terrifying. She just wanted a bed. She just wanted a shower. She just wanted to forget that her lie about the pregnancy had been exposed in front of an international audience. My father, Otis, paid the driver with a handful of crumpled bills he dug out of his pocket. He counted them slowly, his hands shaking. The driver looked annoyed. He snatched the money, threw the suitcases onto the curb, and sped away, leaving a cloud of exhaust in his wake. They stood there for a moment. 4 people and a mountain of luggage. They looked like survivors of a shipwreck who had washed up on a hostile shore. "Well," Genevieve said. Her voice was raspy. "We are home. Let us get inside. I need to take a bath. And then I'm going to call my lawyer. Sloane is going to pay for this. She is going to pay for every single indignity." They began the long trudge up the driveway. The wheels of their heavy suitcases rumbled against the concrete. It was a loud, grinding sound that echoed in the quiet afternoon. It sounded like an invasion. My father reached the front porch first. He dropped his bags with a heavy thud. He sighed a deep sound that seemed to come from his soul. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his key ring. It was a bulky ring filled with keys to things he no longer owned or controlled. Keys to the old Buick, keys to the storage unit, keys to the house. He separated the brass house key. He stepped up to the mahogany door. He looked ready to storm his castle and lock the gates against his ungrateful daughter. He was ready to reclaim his throne. He slid the key into the lock, or rather he tried to. The key slid in halfway and hit a wall of metal. Otis frowned. He pulled the key out. He looked at it. He wiped it on his dirty shirt. He tried again. He jiggled it. He pushed it. He twisted it. Nothing. "What is wrong with you, Otis?" Genevieve snapped. She was standing behind him, tapping her bare foot. "Open the door. I need to use the bathroom. It is not working," Otis said. His voice was puzzled. "It feels stuck." "Give it to me," Genevieve shouted. "You are useless. Even at your own front door you are useless." She pushed him aside. She grabbed the keys. She jammed her key into the deadbolt with violent force. It did not turn. She tried the handle, locked tight. She rattled the doorframe, banging on the wood with her fist, as if brute force could override mechanics. "It is stuck," she screeched. The humidity must have swollen the wood. Or maybe Sloane did something to the alarm system. Dante stepped up. He dropped his bags. He looked ready to kick the door in. He wanted to break something. He wanted to hurt something. "Move," Dante said. "I will break the window. We need to get inside. I need to throw Sloane trash into the street right now." He picked up a decorative garden gnome from the flower bed. He weighed it in his hand like a weapon. But then he stopped. He looked down at the doorframe. There was something new there. A sticker. A bright orange notice that had not been there when they left for Mexico. And the hardware on the door was shining. It was not the tarnished brass handle they had lived with for 20 years. It was polished chrome. It was modern. It was new. "This is not stuck, Mom," Dante said. His voice dropped an octave. "The lock is brand new." My father stepped back. He looked up at the house. He looked at the windows. The blinds were drawn tight. The house looked different. It looked closed. It looked impenetrable. And then the realization hit them. They were not just locked out because of a faulty key. They were locked out because someone else held the key. They were standing on a porch that suddenly felt very public. "Hey, Genevieve," a voice called out from the sidewalk. My mother froze. She knew that voice. It was the voice of Mrs. Johnson. Mrs. Johnson lived next door. She was a retired school principal with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue. She had lived in the neighborhood for 30 years. My mother had spent the last decade looking down on her. My mother called Mrs. Johnson common because she drove a Honda and grew vegetables in her front yard. My mother refused to invite her to the block parties. Now Mrs. Johnson was standing at the edge of her perfectly manicured hedge. She was holding her smartphone up. The little red light was blinking. She was recording. "Having some trouble with the key, honey." Mrs. Johnson called out. Her voice was loud enough to be heard 3 houses down. My mother whipped around. She tried to smooth her hair, but it was hopeless. She tried to summon her haughty demeanor, but she was wearing a stained dress and standing barefoot on a porch she could not enter. "Mind your business, Martha," Genevieve snapped. "We just got back from an international vacation. The lock is just stiff." "Is that right?" Mrs. Johnson said. She zoomed in with her phone camera. "That is funny, because I saw a locksmith truck here 2 days ago, and I saw a moving crew here yesterday. They took a lot of boxes out, Genevieve. It looked like they were cleaning house." "What?" Dante shouted. "Who was here?" Mrs. Johnson smiled. It was a smile of pure vindication. It was the smile of a woman who had been snubbed for years and was now watching the karma train arrive at the station. "I do not know," Mrs. Johnson said innocently, "but the police were here too. They put that nice orange sticker on the door. You might want to read it. I think it says, 'No trespassing.'" My mother's face went white. She turned back to the door. She looked closely at the orange sticker she had ignored. Warning. Property of NK Holdings LLC. No trespassing. Violators will be prosecuted. NK Holdings. My father whispered. He knew that name. He had seen it on the bottom of the foreclosure documents 3 years ago. The documents he had hidden in the pantry. The documents he had ignored until I stepped in and saved them. Dante dropped the garden gnome. It shattered on the concrete porch. Sloane, Dante said. Mrs. Johnson was still filming. Live on Facebook right now, y'all. Mrs. Johnson narrated to her phone. The Anderson family is locked out. Looks like the bill finally came due. You know what they say. You cannot live champagne dreams on a Kool-Aid budget. Shut up, Bianca screamed. She threw her hands up, covering her face. Stop filming us. This is illegal. It is a public sidewalk baby, Mrs. Johnson said. And you are making a public spectacle. My mother began to bang on the door again. She was sobbing now. It was a frantic, terrified sound. Open this door, she screamed to the empty house. Sloane, I know you are in there. Open this door right now. This is my house. I raised you here. You cannot do this. But the house remained silent. The windows stared back like blank eyes. I watched from my car. I watched the woman who had birthed me break down on the porch of the house she had lost years ago. I watched the brother who had stolen from me realize he had nowhere to sleep. I watched the father who had failed to protect me realize he had failed to protect himself. I signaled my driver. Move the car up, I said. The black sedan rolled forward slowly. The tires crunched softly on the asphalt. We pulled up right behind the beat-up taxi that had just left. I opened the door. I stepped out. My white suit was blinding in the afternoon sun. I adjusted my sunglasses. Mrs. Johnson turned her camera toward me. Well, 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 Mrs. Johnson said. The landlord has arrived. I walked up the driveway. The click of my heels was the only sound on the street. I stopped at the bottom of the porch steps. I looked up at them. They looked down at me. They looked dirty. They looked desperate. And for the first time in their lives, they looked at me with fear. Good afternoon, I said. Sloane. My mother gasped. She rushed to the edge of the porch. Her hands were reaching out, but she did not dare touch me. Thank God. Open the door. The key is not working. That nosy witch next door is filming us. Let us inside. I took off my sunglasses. I folded them slowly and hooked them onto the lapel of my blazer. I cannot do that, Mom, I said. Why not? She shrieked. Because you do not live here anymore, I said. The silence that followed was absolute. Even Mrs. Johnson stopped narrating. I pulled a folded document from my purse. It was the deed. It was the eviction notice. It was the end of the line. I bought this house 3 years ago when the bank foreclosed on you, I said. I let you stay here because I loved you. I let you pretend it was yours because I wanted you to have dignity. But you sold your dignity for a lobster dinner in Cabo. I pointed to the street. Get your bags off my porch, I said. You are trespassing. My mother looked at me with a mixture of confusion and fury that twisted her features into something unrecognizable. She stood on the bottom step of the porch, clutching her purse to her chest. She looked like a cornered animal that had not yet realized the cage door was already locked. You are lying, Genevieve screamed. Her voice cracked. We have a mortgage. We have been paying it for 20 years. I wrote the checks myself. You wrote checks to a shell company, Mom, I said. My voice was calm. It was the calm of a surgeon standing over a patient who was already dead on the table. I took a step forward. The gravel crunched beneath my white stilettos. You stopped paying the bank 3 years ago, I continued. Do you remember the pink notices, the ones you hid in the pantry under the cereal boxes so Dad would not see them? Or maybe you do remember Otis. Maybe you just chose to ignore them because Dante needed another $30,000 for a cryptocurrency mining rig that never mined a single coin. My father flinched. He looked at his shoes. He was unable to meet my gaze. He knew. Deep down he knew. You do not miss 6 months of mortgage payments by accident. You miss them by choice. The bank foreclosed on this property on October 14th 3 years ago, I said. My voice carried over the quiet murmur of the neighbors who were now standing on their lawns watching the spectacle. Mrs. Johnson was still filming her phone held high like a torch of truth. It was scheduled for auction. You were going to be on the street in 30 days. But then a miracle happened, did it not? The bank suddenly called and said an anonymous investor had purchased the note. They said you could stay as tenants at will, rent-free, as long as you maintained the property. I laughed. It was a short, sharp sound. You thought it was divine intervention. You told everyone at church that God had blessed you for your faithfulness. You gave a testimony about it. It was not God, Mom, I said. It was me. I signaled to the black sedan parked behind me. The rear door opened, and a man in a gray suit stepped out. It was Mr. Sterling, my attorney. He was carrying a thick file folder. I formed SK Holdings LLC that morning, I said. I wired the funds to clear the arrears and buy the deed outright. I saved you from humiliation. I saved you from homelessness. I let you live here for 3 years without asking for a dime because I foolishly thought that you were just bad with money, not bad people. My mother shook her head, backing away until she bumped into the door she could not open. No, she whispered. That is impossible. You are just a crisis manager. You do not have that kind of money. Mr. Sterling walked up the driveway. He did not look at my disheveled family. He looked at me. He handed me the deed. I held it up. The county clerk's seal gleamed in the afternoon sun. I could afford this house 10 times over, I said. While you were funneling every spare cent into the delusions of your son, I was building an empire. I own this house. I own the car in the garage. I own the furniture you are so worried about. And for 3 years I let you play pretend. I let you act like the lords of the manor while I paid the property taxes and the insurance and the repairs you were too cheap to make. Dante stepped forward. His face was a mask of ugly realization mixed with a new desperate greed. So you just bought it to hold it over us, Dante shouted. You did it to control us. I bought it to protect you. I snapped. My composure cracked just enough to show the fire underneath. I bought it because despite everything you were my family. I did not want my parents sleeping in a shelter. I did not want my brother living in his car. I did it out of love, Dante, a concept you clearly know nothing about. I looked at Bianca, who was trying to make herself invisible behind a rhododendron bush. And you, I said. You moved in here 6 months ago. You complained about the kitchen tile. You complained about the draft in the master bedroom. You treated this house like it was not good enough for you. Well, guess what, Bianca? It is too good for you because it is mine. My mother was crying now. These were not the fake tears she used to get her way. These were real tears, the kind that come when the delusion finally shatters and the cold wind of reality hits your face. Sloane, please, she sobbed. We did not know. If we had known. If you had known, you would have just asked for more. I cut her off. You would have bled me dry. You would have demanded I put the deed in the name of Dante so he could leverage it for another loan. That is why I kept it secret. I wanted to see if you could be grateful for the miracle without knowing the source. But you were not grateful. You were entitled. I took a step back, smoothing the lapel of my white suit. I was willing to let you stay here forever, I said softly. I was willing to pay the bills and let you play house until the day you died. All I wanted was a little respect, just a crumb of decency. I looked my mother dead in the eye, but then we went to Cabo. And you sat at that table eating the food I paid for, wearing the clothes I bought. And you looked at me and said that the trip was not about me. You erased me, Mom. You told me I did not matter as long as the checks cleared. The memory of that lunch burned in my chest. Well, you were right, I said. The trip was not about me. But this house is definitely about me. Because I am the landlord, and the lease was terminated the moment you stole from me. Mr. Sterling stepped forward. He opened the file folder. Mr. and Mrs. King, the lawyer said. His voice was dry and devoid of emotion. According to Clause 14, Section B of your tenancy at will agreement, any act of theft, fraud, or attempted financial crime against the property owner or their agents results in immediate termination of the lease without notice. He looked at Dante. Attempted wire fraud in the amount of $50,000 constitutes a violation of this clause. Furthermore, the unauthorized use of the credit card of the owner at the Gucci boutique constitutes a second violation. He handed a paper to my father. Otis took it, his hands shaking so badly the paper rattled. "You have been evicted effective 48 hours ago," Mr. Sterling said. "The locks have been changed. Your personal belongings have been packed and placed on the curb." "What?" Dante screamed. He looked at the street. I pointed to the side of the house near the garage. A large moving truck had just pulled up. 2 men jumped out. They walked to the garage door, which I opened with a remote control I pulled from my purse. Inside the garage was a mountain of cardboard boxes and black garbage bags. It represented the sum total of the life of my brother. His collection of unsold depreciating sneakers sat in clear plastic bins looking like cheap toys. The fast fashion wardrobe of Bianca was bursting out of trash bags that were already tearing at the seams. It was not just an eviction, it was an exorcism. The physical removal of the parasites that had been feeding on my success for a decade was finally complete, laid out for the entire neighborhood to see. Bianca stood staring at the pile. Her face was a canvas of processing emotions: shock, denial. Then a sharp, sudden calculation. She looked at the locked house, the fortress she thought she had conquered. She looked at the police officer who was standing by his cruiser, arms crossed, making it clear he was not there to help them move back in. Then she looked at Dante. The math in her head was visible even from where I stood. Dante plus no house plus no rich sister equaled 0. She let out a scream that made the neighbors flinch. It was not a scream of fear, but of pure, unadulterated rage directed at the man she had hitched her wagon to. She kicked a box labeled Dante Office, sending a stack of failed business plans spilling into the gutter. "You lied to me," she shrieked. Her voice cracked. "You told me this was ours. You told me your sister was just the bankroll, that she did not matter. You said this house was in a trust for you." Dante was pacing, muttering to himself, running his hands over his head like he was trying to hold his skull together. He looked like a man who had just woken up from a coma to find the world had ended. He reached out to touch the arm of Bianca, seeking comfort, seeking an ally in the disaster he had created. "Baby, please," he stammered. His voice was weak. "We can figure this out. We just need to go to a hotel. We need to regroup. Sloane is just... She is having an episode. She will calm down. We just need to wait her out. Don't touch me," Bianca hissed, slapping his hand away as if he were contagious. "Calm down. She is not having an episode, Dante. She won. She owns the house. She owns the roof, the walls, the floorboards." She pointed a shaking finger at him. "And what do you own? A pile of shoes and a negative bank account. You are nothing. You are a scrub." "Bianca, stop. Everyone is watching." Dante pleaded, glancing at Mrs. Johnson next door, who was now live streaming the entire breakdown to what I assumed was a very engaged audience. "Let them watch." Bianca screamed, her eyes wild. "I want them to know. I want everyone to know that I was scammed. I married you because I thought you had a future. I thought you were an investor. But you are just a loser in a rented suit living off the charity of your sister." I stood by my car, watching the implosion. It was fascinating in a morbid way. The love story of the century, dismantling itself in real time over real estate and credit limits. Bianca was not heartbroken. She was broke. And for a woman like her, that was a fate worse than death. "I want a divorce," she announced. Her voice dropped to a cold final register. "I am not staying married to a homeless man. I am not dragging my luggage to a shelter with you. I am done." Dante looked as if she had shot him. "But Bianca," he whispered, "we are a team. We are supposed to be partners. The baby, we were a team when there was money to spend." She spat. "Now you are just dead weight, and I do not carry dead weight." She pulled out her phone. She tapped furiously on the screen. Dante stood there, swaying slightly, stripped of his arrogance, stripped of his lies. He looked at his wife, who was currently ignoring him to track a rideshare. Then slowly he turned his head and looked at me. I saw the moment the desperation took over. I saw the pride dissolve, leaving behind only the pathetic, grasping need of a child who has never been told no. He walked toward me. The police officer took a step forward, hand dropping to his belt, but I shook my head slightly. Let him come." Dante stopped 3 feet away from me. He looked at my Italian shoes. He looked at the diamond studs in my ears. He looked at the deed to the house that was sitting on the hood of my car. "Sloane," he said. His voice was trembling. "Please, you cannot do this. Where am I supposed to go? I have nothing." "You have exactly what you earned, Dante," I said. He crumbled. It was not a figure of speech. He physically collapsed. His knees hit the concrete of the driveway with a sickening thud. He grabbed the hem of my white trousers, his knuckles white, his face streaked with sweat and tears. "I am sorry," he sobbed, burying his face in the fabric of my suit. "I am so sorry. I will pay you back. I will work. I will do whatever you want. Just do not leave me out here. Do not let her leave me. Please, Sloane, we are blood. You promised to always look out for me." I looked down at him. I remembered him stealing my college fund. I remembered him mocking my job. I remembered him trying to hack my laptop in Mexico. I did not feel pity. I did not feel love. I felt the cold, hard clarity of a surgeon cutting out a tumor. I pulled my leg away, dislodging his grip. I took a step back, dusting off the spot where he had touched me. I promised to look out for my brother. I said, my voice echoing off the front of the house he used to live in. "But you are not my brother anymore, Dante. You are a 35-year-old man kneeling in the dirt because he is too lazy to stand on his own 2 feet. You are not a victim. You are a parasite, and I am done feeding you. Stand up," I commanded. He looked up at me, his eyes red and swollen. He did not move. "Stand up," I repeated louder this time. "Have some dignity, Dante. You are embarrassing yourself. You are embarrassing the family name you claim to care so much about. Get off your knees and walk." He did not stand. He just slumped back onto his heels, weeping into his hands. A broken man-child who had finally hit a wall he could not charm or bully his way through. Behind him, a silver sedan pulled up to the curb. It was a beat-up Toyota with an Uber sticker in the window. The driver, a young guy with a scruffy beard, leaned out the window. "Ride for Bianca," he called out. Bianca did not hesitate. She grabbed the handle of her largest suitcase, leaving the rest of her boxes on the lawn. She did not look at Dante. She did not look at me. She marched down the driveway, her bare feet slapping against the pavement. The driver got out to pop the trunk. He looked at Bianca. He looked at the crying man on the ground. Then he flashed Bianca a smile. "Rough day?" he asked. Bianca tossed her bag into the trunk and slid into the front seat right next to him. She smoothed her hair and turned to the driver, her voice dropping into that flirtatious purr I knew so well. "Just get me out of here," she said, "and maybe turn the music up. I love this song." As the car pulled away, she adjusted the rear-view mirror, not to look back at the husband she was abandoning, but to fix her lipstick. She was already moving on. The host organism had died, and the parasite was seeking a new vessel. I looked down at Dante, still kneeling, still crying. The police officer looked at me, waiting for instructions. "He has 5 minutes to collect his things and leave the premises." I told the officer, "If he is still here at 4:05, arrest him for trespassing." I turned and walked back to my car. I did not watch him scramble. I did not need to. I had a house to sell and a life to live. The silence that descended on the driveway after the silver sedan disappeared was heavy and suffocating. The spectacle was over. The neighbors had retreated behind their curtains, though I knew they were still watching. Mrs. Johnson had finally lowered her phone, but she remained on her porch watering her hydrangeas with suspicious intensity. Dante was gone. He had frantically shoved his remaining sneaker boxes into the back of his own leased sedan, terrified that the police officer would make good on his threat to arrest him. That left just 3 of us standing on the concrete. Me, the landlord, and my parents, the tenants who had just been fired. My father, Otis, looked like a man whose soul had been siphoned out through a straw. He was staring at the spot where the car of Bianca had vanished. Perhaps he was realizing that the legacy he thought he was building was actually just a house of cards that had finally collapsed. He looked small. He looked frail. He looked like a stranger. But my mother, Genevieve, was not done. She was never done. She turned her gaze from her ruined son to me, and I watched her face shift. The rage was gone. The entitlement was gone. In their place was a terrifying vulnerability. It was a weaponized fragility she saved for moments when she had no other ammunition left. She took a step toward me, her hands clasped together as if in prayer. She hunched her shoulders. She let her mouth hang open slightly. She looked old. For the first time I saw the lines around her mouth, not as marks of bitterness, but as cracks in a facade that could no longer hold itself together. "Sloane," she said. Her voice was trembling. "Look at us. Look at your father. He is 62 years old. He has high blood pressure. I have arthritis in my knees. We cannot live on the street. You cannot do this to us." I did not move. I stood my ground, my heels planted firmly on the driveway I owned. "I am not the one who stopped paying the mortgage, Mom," I said. "I am not the one who took a paid-off life and gambled it on a son who never worked a day in his life." She let out a sob. It was a wet, pathetic sound. "We made mistakes," she said. "I know we made mistakes, but we are your parents. We gave you life. Does that not count for anything? Are you really going to let us sleep in a shelter? Are you going to let your father sleep on a cot next to strangers because you want to prove a point?" The guilt trip. It was her masterpiece. She was trying to make me feel like the villain in a tragedy she had written, directed, and starred in. She wanted me to crack. She wanted me to say, "Okay, you can stay just one more month." And then that month would turn into a year, and I would be back to being the bankroll paying for their mistakes with my peace of mind. But I had prepared for this moment. I knew she would play the age card. I knew she would play the health card. And because I am the daughter of my mother, I had a plan. I reached into my purse. My mother's eyes lit up with a flicker of hope. She thought I was reaching for my checkbook. She thought I was reaching for the keys to the house. She thought she had won. Instead, I pulled out a small brass keyring with a single silver key and a white plastic tag. "I am not sending you to a shelter, Genevieve," I said, my voice devoid of warmth. "I am not that cruel. Even though you left me at an airport when I was 15, even though you let me believe you were destitute while you were buying handbags, I still have a conscience." I held out the key. "This is for Unit 4B at the Shady Pines Apartments in the East Side," I said. My father looked up. His eyes widened. "The East Side?" he whispered. That was 40 minutes away. It was a neighborhood known for industrial parks and bus depots, not country clubs. It was a place where people lived because they had to, not because they wanted to. It was a place where Mrs. Johnson would never set foot. "It is a one-bedroom apartment," I continued. "It is clean. It is safe. It is on the second floor. There is no elevator, so you will have to take the stairs. It will be good for your heart, Dad." My mother stared at the key as if it were a venomous snake. "A one-bedroom in the East Side Sloane," she gasped. "We cannot live there. All our friends are here. Our church is here. The neighbors will talk. Your friends think you own this house," I reminded her. "I imagine you will not be hosting many dinner parties for a while anyway." I pressed the key into her hand. Her fingers closed around it automatically. They felt cold and clammy. "I have paid the rent for 3 months," I said. "The utilities are in your name. You have 90 days to figure out your next move. You can get jobs, you can apply for Social Security, you can ask Dante for help, though I would not count on it." I took a step back, creating distance between us. It was a physical boundary to match the emotional one I had just built. "But after 3 months, the rent is your problem," I said. She looked at the key, then back at the house. She looked at the beautiful, spacious home she had lost because she wanted to pretend she was better than she was. "This is it," she whispered. "This is all we get. 3 months in a dump." "It is not a dump, Mom," I said. "It is a roof over your head. It is more than you gave me when you tried to steal my savings. It is more than you gave me when you cut me out of this family." I looked at her one last time. "This is the final act of filial piety," I said. "I have paid your debts. I have saved your credit. I have put a roof over your head. I have done my duty. Now I am done." My father walked over and took the key from the hand of my mother. He looked at it for a long time. He did not look angry. He looked resigned. He looked like a man who finally understood the cost of the ticket he had bought. "Thank you, Sloane," he said softly. "Do not thank me, Dad," I said. "Just survive." I turned around and walked back to my car. The driver opened the door for me. I slid into the cool leather interior and closed the door, shutting out the heat, the humidity, and the sight of my parents standing on the curb with nothing but a silver key and the consequences of their own actions. "Take me to the airport," I told the driver. "I have a flight to London to catch." As the car pulled away, I did not look back. I did not need to see them get into their beat-up taxi. I did not need to see them drive away to their new, smaller life. I had my own life to live, and for the first time in 32 years, it was entirely my own. 6 months have passed since the day I watched my family drive away with their lives packed into the trunk of a rideshare. The silence in my world has transformed from a void into a sanctuary. I am standing on the balcony of my new penthouse in London. It is 40 floors above the Thames. The city lights reflect off the dark water like scattered coins. This place is made of glass and steel and quiet accomplishment. It does not have a white picket fence or hydrangeas in the front yard, but it has a 24-hour doorman and a security system that responds only to my biometrics. I sold the house on Oak Creek Drive 3 weeks after the eviction. The market was hot, and a young couple from the tech sector paid $50,000 over the asking price. They loved the renovations I had paid for over the years. They loved the roof I fixed and the kitchen I upgraded while my parents pretended it was their money. I took the proceeds from the sale, every single cent of equity that my parents had assumed was their retirement fund, and I reinvested it. I did not buy a yacht. I did not buy a vacation home. I opened the London branch of my crisis management firm. It felt like poetic justice. The very asset they tried to steal from me became the engine that launched my business onto the global stage. I keep tabs on them, not out of obligation, but out of a professional habit of monitoring potential liabilities. My parents are living in the apartment I rented for them. They are still there because they have no other choice. The 3 months of prepaid rent ran out 90 days ago. I did not renew it. I did not send a check. I let them figure it out. My private investigator sent me a photo last week. It was taken at a discount supermarket in the East Side. My father, Otis, was wearing a blue vest that was a size too big for him. He was bagging groceries for a woman who looked younger than me. He looked tired. His shoulders were stooped, and his hands moved slower than the other employees, but he was working. For the first time in 20 years, Otis Anderson was earning the bread he ate. In the background of the photo, I saw my mother. She was sitting on a stool at a register scanning items. She was not wearing her designer scarves. She was not wearing her pearls. She was wearing a uniform and a name tag that just said, Genevieve. She looked humbled. She looked grounded. They are surviving just as I told them to. They are learning the value of $1 the hard way at 60 years old. It is a harsh lesson, but it is the only one that ever stuck. Dante was not so lucky. Or perhaps luck had nothing to do with it. Desperation makes people sloppy, and Dante was already starting from a deficit of intelligence. 2 months after the eviction, after Bianca left him, and he was sleeping on a couch of a friend, he tried to run a credit card skimming operation. He bought a card reader online and tried to harvest data at a gas station. He was not smart enough to cover his digital tracks. He tried to hack a stranger account just like he tried to hack mine in Mexico. The difference is, the stranger did not have a familial soft spot. They pressed charges immediately. Dante is currently serving 18 months in a medium security facility upstate for identity theft and credit card fraud. He called me once collect from the prison. The automated voice asked if I would accept the charges. I declined. I heard through the grapevine that he is working in the prison laundry. Finally, he has a steady job with benefits. It is the most stability he has had in his adult life. Today the mail arrived. On top of the stack of business contracts and dividend checks was a heavy cream-colored envelope with gold calligraphy. It looked familiar. It smelled like expensive desperation. I opened it, standing in my marble kitchen. It was a wedding invitation. The cardstock was thick enough to cut skin. The honor of your presence is requested at the marriage of Rebecca Miller to Arthur Sterling. I looked up Arthur Sterling on my phone. He is a 75-year-old real estate magnate in Florida with 3 ex-wives and a pacemaker. Bianca did not waste time. She found a new host. She found a new wallet. She found a new aesthetic. The date is set for next month in the Hamptons. She must have sent it to me as a final dig, or perhaps she delusionally thought I might send a gift out of habit. I looked at the invitation. I thought about the girl who mocked my skin tone. I thought about the woman who demanded I pay for her dinner while she sat at a different table because I ruined the vibe. I felt nothing. No anger, no jealousy, no vindication. Just a mild amusement at the predictability of parasites. I walked over to the trash can. I did not tear it up. I did not burn it. I did not write a nasty note and send it back. I just dropped it in right on top of the coffee grounds and eggshells. It belonged with the refuse. I poured myself a glass of wine, not champagne, just a rich, dark red wine that tasted like the earth. I walked out to the balcony. Julian was standing there leaning against the railing. He looked handsome in the London twilight. He turned when he heard me approach. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Everything is perfect," I said. I looked at the skyline and I did not see lonely lights. I see opportunities. I see a future that belongs entirely to me. I used to think that family was the one thing you could not quit. I thought that blood was a binding contract written in stone. But contracts can be breached, and when one party consistently violates the terms, when they take and take until there is nothing left but bone and resentment, you have every right to void the agreement. My parents are learning to live within their means, a lesson 30 years overdue. My brother is learning that actions have consequences in a concrete cell. My sister-in-law is learning that you cannot build a life on a foundation of lies and credit cards of someone else. And me. I am learning who I am when I am not being drained. I am learning that I am enough, not because of what I can provide, but because of who I am. Julian put his arm around me. The city breathed beneath us. I took a sip of wine. It tasted better than it ever had before because it was mine. We often mistake financial support for love, hoping that our generosity will eventually buy us the respect we crave from those who share our blood. But I learned the hard way that you cannot purchase validation from people who view you merely as a resource. True freedom is not found in a penthouse or a bank account. It is found in the courage to set boundaries. Walking away was not an act of cruelty. It was an act of survival. By cutting them off, I did not just save my fortune, I reclaimed my dignity. Remember, you are never obligated to set yourself on fire just to keep ungrateful people warm.